What is up, Earthnoids and Spacenoids? I am just a simple new type, and in this episode, we are finally getting all Mafty up in here as we cover Hathaway's Flash. This is our coverage of the light novel, and not the movie, though we will be making comparisons. I would like to think that I will eventually cover the movie trilogy, though I am sure I will be dead before they finish the two remaining movies. One thing that we have to note before starting is that the light novel is a direct continuation to Beltachika's Children. Unicorn doesn't exist yet, so this is treated as the next big event post Char's rebellion. This time, we head to Universal Century 105, where we meet Kenneth of the Kimberly Task Force as he heads to Earth. His shuttle is hijacked, but a young man helps them out. So let's get into this. Kenneth's leg passes by a young man on his laptop. They are in 0G, and you can easily float over someone, but it is considered poor etiquette to do that. He is currently on the shuttle of the Houndsman, and many other people on board are a part of the privileged class. There are 40 passengers and a crew of 5 on this flight, whether you are an Earthnoid or a Spacenoid. Being on this flight means that you are well-connected or powerful. Because of this, Flight 357 doesn't have to go through your typical immigration and customs process. Being able to get a ticket on the Houndsman is your security clearance. The Houndsman is also one of the few ships that can enter Earth's atmosphere. I imagine you have to take a shuttle or use a mass driver system to leave Earth's orbit, then dock with a different ship that will take you to your location. Or maybe the moon acts as a spaceport, although if that were the case, imagine going to Side 4. You have to pass it just to go to the moon and then travel back to the L1 point. That is why no one visits you on Side 4, Craig. It's the Valley of Space Colonies. No one's going to the Valley. Kenneth attempts to sit next to a young Gigi Andalusia. Kenneth has been finding himself a little bored with his position on Earth currently, but it isn't without its action, as his Kimberly Task Force is currently dealing with the terrorist organization Mafty. Things have picked up recently, as his underling, Lane Aim, became the test pilot for the new Penelope unit. He was also recently appointed as the leader of the Kimberly unit. This is how he was able to get a seat on the Houndsman. He was able to use his pool in EFF to get the fastest trip back to Earth. As most of the people on this flight are some of EFF's elites, Kenneth certainly feels out of place. He goes to the bathroom where he looks at himself and wonders why his ex-wife Laura would leave such a handsome man. At least you have a good attitude about it. Just kidding, he's gonna be obnoxious in a little bit. He heads back to his seat where he sees a few EFF cabinet members and their wives/mistresses. Many men have come over to talk to Gigi, and Kenneth is no different, though she is blunt about the conversation being temporary. In the movie, it is noted that Gigi purchased both tickets to prevent this very thing from happening. They have some small talk before she asks Kenneth what he thinks of Mafty Aaron. He hesitates to answer, but she knows that he is heading to Earth to try to stop Mafty. She seems to be able to sense what he is thinking. He hesitates again, but she pushes for an answer. Kenneth says that he is a dangerous individual that needs to be stopped. Most of the press has resorted to writing their puff piece, claiming that Mafty may be the next Char or Amado. Mafty is targeting members of VFF and planning on cleansing the world by making everyone leave. She seems to be done with Kenneth when he asks her what her opinion on Mafty is. She says that she finds him cute. Kenneth can sense that she is done talking to him, so he floats back to his seat next to a young man. In the movie, she outright says, "I'm done talking to you," and another guy makes a move. It is time for the last meal of the flight. As Gigi heads to the lounge, many of the women on board are getting jealous of the attention Gigi is getting. The young man heads to the lounge to move his feet and to prevent himself from laughing in front of all the insecure middle-aged women. He heads to the bartender and jokes about ordering a glass of milk, but eventually orders a wild turkey. Good to know wild turkey still exists in Universal Century. The two strike a conversation. The young man is only here because of his father, though his position does allow him access to freely travel from Earth to the colonies, so he can't complain. For the common individual, it is hard to travel to Earth these days. He tells the bartender that he is a candidate for a biological observer position. The conversation changes back to Mafty, as he wonders if EFF plans on exterminating them. That is when Gigi yells out loud across the lounge, saying the media thinks he is a savior. A cabinet member that she is yelling at is playing it off, saying that this is nothing but trashy tabloids and not to give them any attention. She says that even if that were the case, things like the news ticker and graffiti are saying one thing: Mafty Aaron is the Messiah, the second coming of a new type, and Mafty will purify the Federation government. The young man and bartender wonder how a girl like her gets a ticket on a ship like this. The bartender thinks that she is someone's mistress, even though she is still in her teens. That is when crew member Mace Flower walks in, as she has been busy dealing with the socialite Israelites. She plays a very minor role in the movie where she has a brief conversation with Kenneth. She refills her supplies and goes to give Kenneth a bourbon as they prep for landing. He tells Mace, and I quote, "Well, I will not go into too much detail, for you might mistake me for a racist or some sort, but I came to a conclusion that every blonde is different." This is a really blunt thing to say, but it is in relationship to his ex-wife. His ex was a controlling person and a blonde, so he stereotypes blondes, but claims that Mace is different. You know, explaining that doesn't make Kenneth come off any better. No wonder the birth rate is down in Japan. He says, regardless of the pain, he still likes blonde white women. This is the kind of guy that ends up dating the same kind of woman and doesn't grow from his experiences. Here's a great lie that Kenneth tells himself, as I quote, "The reason why Kenneth was able to like a girl named Gigi Andalusia was not because of the sentimental reasons, but her existence itself. It was both rational and intuitive at the same time. It was not physiological." Nah, man, you're lying to yourself. It is all physical. You barely talk to this person. However, he begins flirting with Mace when the young man passes by him. He says, "Excuse me," to Kenneth. This is the first time the young man spoke to him. He continues flirting as she doesn't relate to EFF. In UC 105, the EFF military and government is seen as the elites, as there have been 13 years of peace and the military is not being fought by the average person. Kenneth agrees with Mace, though the military allows him to be around mobile suits. He is lucky to be doing something he loves. He thinks that mobile suits at least never betrayed him in life. Oh my god, your wife divorced you, get over it. As much as he loves flirting, he believes that women have been nothing but an obstruction in his life. The Houndsman begins decelerating as it makes it into the upper atmosphere. Everyone goes back to their seats and puts their tray tables and the upright in locked position. Kenneth notes that spacenoids always get nervous entering the Earth's atmosphere. When on Earth, air, as he puts it, flows. As a pilot, flying in space is a constant, but that can't be said for Earth's atmosphere. That is when the ship experiences extreme gusts of turbulence. Everyone in the cabin is bouncing around. The young man next to Kenneth says that it is a base jabber, but from whom? In the anime, these terrorists were dropped off by a Gap plant instead. The young man moves closer to Kenneth and says that they aren't trying to kill them. This is a hijacking. Another crash happens, causing Mace to float off. The young man goes to save her. They are at the bow of the ship, and they just hear noises coming from the back. Kenneth goes to investigate, gun in hand. One of the cabinet members, Einstein, tries to stop Kenneth from attacking out of fear of his and his cabinet members' lives. He tells the cabinet member that is ridiculous, but a muffled voice behind him suggests that he complies. He assumes it is a terrorist, and a gun is pointed right at him, so he listens, tossing the gun down. The hijacker claims to be Mafdi Aaron and is wearing a pumpkin mask. Pumpkin Man approaches the young man and Mace. Some of his men head towards the cockpit. The terrorists force Kenneth to sit, and they inform everyone that they are not here to kill them. However, they currently need funds, so they are holding the cabinet members prisoner until EFF pays up. One cabinet member wonders how they figured out the location of this ship. EFF covered up the Houndsman's location for this reason, but considering they know it, it can be assumed they knew this whole time and chose now to attack. The man continues asking questions, but Mafdi shuts him up by shooting him until his mouth stopped moving. His wife screams as blood goes everywhere. The people in the cockpit try to contact Hong Kong to communicate their demands. Mafdi grabs the passenger manifest and does a roll call. Mafdi calls out to Gigi, then calls out to Hathaway Noah. The young man raises his hand. Mafdi wonders if he is that Hathaway, referring to being the son of the Great Slapper. He thought he was a part of an anti-military and anti-ideology group, but he doesn't care, as he now has a new hostage. Mafdi makes Hathaway wrap up the dead minister. As he does so, his wife, who passed out from watching her husband die slowly, comes to. She begins yelling and screaming for the dead husband. Mace tells her to be quiet or she will be killed. Sure enough, Mafdi shoots the wife in the back of the head. In the movie, Hathaway and Gigi have a new type moment, but in the light novel, she just says out loud, "Hey, you should kill these fake Mafdi guys." Hathaway had his suspicions, but this causes Pumpkin Man to be taken aback. He lets his guard down, and Hathaway makes his move. The fight is a little different as Hathaway takes out the fake Mafdi quickly. Then he takes out Pirate Mask Guy while Pumpkin Man gets up. That is when Kenneth puts a knee on the terrorist's back. Unlike the anime, in the light novel, Kenneth's hands are tied. Hathaway heads to the cockpit where he kills one man and tells the other to surrender and tells the base jabber to withdraw. In the movie, Kenneth gets an assist by killing the final hijacker. They tie up the terrorists as Kenneth gets his restraints off. The uninterested Gigi is suddenly all into Hathaway and Kenneth after saving the day. However, Hathaway is bothered by her words. How did she know they were the fake Mafdi? The terrorist space jabber ended up damaging the Houndsman when they hijacked the plane. They are diverting their course from Hong Kong to Davao in the Philippines. This happens to be home to Kenneth's future base. A man comes to talk to Hathaway. It is Mr. McGovern, the Minister of Culture and Education Promotion. He knows of his exploits piloting a mobile suit and wonders if the ship is okay. Hathaway tells him that he knows nothing about flying machines anymore, but they will be heading to Davao. Everyone is concerned about where they are heading, but their nerves are calmed when they are informed that they are close to Adelaide, and they could spend their time enjoying the tropical climate while they wait. They are all happy, but Hathaway is disgusted that all their ministers forgot that their cohort was just murdered. He bites his tongue. They land and connect to an air dock. In the movie, EFF surrounds the ship and treats the Houndsman still as an active terrorist threat. They also get to use the emergency chutes. I always wanted to use one of those, but never want to be in a situation that requires me to use it. He checks on the terrorists, then checks on Mace Flower. She says that she is fine, but winces in pain when she plays with her hair. The ministers get off one by one. The last is Gigi. In the movie, the two stare at each other. But in the light novel, he wants to say what to her as she stares. But he hesitates and the moment passes. Kenneth gets off the phone with his subordinates, who are on their way. It seems Gigi was right and these guys aren't the real Mafti. He believes that there is a Mafti army being built up in Owenbelly in northern Australia. Kenneth and the Kimberley forces are now essentially Mafti hunters. One of his men take the terrorists away to investigate them before the local police get their hands on them. Hathaway is concerned about the Mafti army in Owenbelly. After being questioned by the police, he is then bombarded with praises from all the ministers and their wives. He is then questioned by Hundley Yoaksum, the chief of criminal police organization. One thing to note is that in the light novel, Hindley was in a shuttle tailing behind the Houndsman. But in the movie, he was on the Houndsman. Hey, that's Koichi Yamadera. He also played Gune. Stupid Gune. He knows of his father and his exploits as a pilot during Char's rebellion. Hathaway says that he just stole a mobile suit and he got lucky he wasn't charged with a crime. Hundley wants him to stay in Davao for the day. The airline will handle his hotel arrangements. Hathaway informs them that he is heading to Manadaw, Sulawesi in Indonesia as a biological observer in training. Hundley is very casual about his questioning. But director Gijs Hugest has more questions. He also wants Hathaway to keep this a secret. He didn't like the way the director was talking down to him and left before he was finished talking. Across from him is Gigi. He approaches her and he begins some light flirting. He wonders why she laughed earlier on the plane. She asks him to sit down. He changes the subject and asks how she knew the terrorists weren't the real Mafti. She says that body language tells all. Also, the reason she was actually laughing was because she believes that the name Mafti Nabiyu Aaron belongs to Hathaway. Mafti means Messiah in Abrahamic religions, and Nabiyu derives from Nabin, which is prophet in Arabic. Aaron it's just Aaron. He realizes that she knows he is lying and might have to prepare for a capture. I'm going to break the fourth wall here and point out that throughout the first few chapters, Hathaway has been having an internal monologue saying comments like, "Do they know?" or "Are they onto me?" He never outright says it, but if you're watching this video, it's obvious that Hathaway is Mafti. This is where I believe the movie actually shines. Hathaway's silence and stoic behavior buries the lead a little better than the light novel. Hearing one's internal monologue breaks the reader's suspension of disbelief, but it does play into the paranoia much more. Hathaway recalls Kenneth telling him that the Kimberley Force's former commander is Kimberly Hayman. His incompetence is the reason why Mafti was able to move so freely and grow over the past 6 months. Gigi believes that him being on the Houndsman is quite interesting. He says that words could get people killed and to be careful. The conversation goes from flirty to awkward. The Investigation Bureau begins questioning Gigi. He has found himself in a situation where he can't act. When given recon data on this island months ago, he never could have expected Kenneth and the Kimberley forces to get in their way. They planned for an attack as a distraction for Hathaway to flee, but the sooner they come now, the harder it is going to be for him. He can't contact Gauman and the others in this situation. One by one, the investigators question all the passengers. They save Hathaway for last. He wonders if they are setting him up. Gigi eventually comes back over to Hathaway and shows him the hotel card. She wants to wait for him so they could head over together. This calms Hathaway down as it seems she didn't say anything to the investigators. It almost seems as though she forgot about the conversation they had earlier, as she is very cheerful once again. Hong Kong isn't Gigi's final destination. She is looking to head out to Japan. Hathaway tells her that his mother's ancestors are from Japan. Gigi goes, "Oh, stop looking at me like that." She is insinuating that he sees his mother in her. Oedipus would be proud. She says that Mafti's methods aren't the right way. Hathaway wonders what is the right way. She says if you want something without fail, then you need to establish the ideal dictatorship. Hathaway nervously laughs, knowing that she speaks the truth. But what she speaks of is a god, and humans aren't gods. But there are new types. However, a few new types in an old type world does not represent change. Hathaway says that Mafty certainly can try, but the scale in which EFF operates is simply too grand. An investigator comes to interrogate Hathaway finally. Gigi says that she will be waiting for him. Chief Geist finishes his conversation with Hathaway. They give him a card to the hotel and say that he could stay as long as he likes. Hathaway jokingly says indefinitely. Without skipping a beat, they essentially say yeah if that's needed. He heads out to the front to meet with Gigi. He pretends to be interested in his surroundings, but in his head, he is taking an inventory of everyone and their faces. He gets into a pink limo with Gigi and looks back to wave, but he is memorizing the roads. She wonders what is wrong. He whispers into her ears that he doesn't want to put her in danger. This makes her laugh. 20 minutes later, they arrive at the hotel. The Tassadeh Hotel is 100 years old. As he passes through the hotel, he notices one of his contacts, Mahesia Hintz. He is relieved, but continues heading up to the luxury suites with Gigi and the bellboy. They enter into the giant suite. He looks around to see EFF base out in the distance. Gigi insists that he stay in her room, even though he wants to take the guest bedroom. He asks the porter if any other people from the Houndsend flight have checked in. The bellboy isn't sure. Their room is high up, but there are still floors above them. Hathaway realizes that he isn't a guest at this hotel. He is a prisoner. He needs to find a way to escape and meet with Mahesia. As Gigi goes to take a shower, he goes to the other room and grabs a toiletries bag. He grabs some tweezers and pulls out a fake wisdom tooth containing microfilm. He puts the microfilm in his book that he is reading and changes clothes. In the movie, Hathaway simply looks at some maps and does a little bit of cartography. He goes to find her half naked. He essentially calls her a tramp for acting like that when they aren't even dating. This upsets her, and she locks herself in the main bedroom. This is exactly what Hathaway was hoping for. He knocks on the door to ask if she wants to go for a walk, which she declines. Now he has a casual reason to leave the room and meet up with Mahesia. He can't let his guard down around Gigi. She could become an ally, but if he pushes her away, she can run off to EFF and Kenneth. He is totally into these paradoxical women. It reminds him of Quest. Uh-oh, Hathaway's in love again. Hathaway pretends to be a normal tourist sightseeing as he coordinates a meetup with Mahesia. They sneak into a car and it takes off. The driver is Kenji Mitsuda. He hands over the book to her and asks about the forces in Owenbelly, Australia. They are 30,000 strong. He wonders if Quacksalver had anything to do with this, but they haven't made contact with him. They are planning for a retrieval of a Gundam. He also asks about the Kimberly Force's movements. They have also left for Owenbelly yesterday. Hathaway realizes that this move was made before Kenneth is officially made commander. Kimberly is panicking, which is good for them and their operation. They also just got intel that Kenneth is most likely testing a new mobile suit at the base. He took the Houndsend for convenience, but it is slowly becoming a burden. Kenneth has his eyes on Hathaway right now, but they have to go through with the plan. He tells them to attack the hotel near the top since they are somewhere in the middle of the hotel. This will make it seem like he has no involvement, but it is still dangerous. They need to tell Professor Amada that he may be investigated soon. This is the professor he claims to be working with as a biological researcher. He is functioning as Hathaway's alibi. They take Hathaway back to the hotel. In the movie, this conversation takes place throughout Davao as they walk around the city and a botanical garden. While having their conversation, we hear conversations from the citizens, hoping that Mafty takes care of the manhunters that patrol the city. This is the first moment in the movie where your suspicions are confirmed that he is indeed Mafty. The light novel, unfortunately, deprives us of the Jollibee scene where we get to see that sweet Hathaway booty. 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 As they go to take Hathaway back to the hotel, they notice black minivans in the center of the street blocking the path. The manhunters are intimidating a crowd. Mahesia was once caught by the manhunters and forcibly deported to space. If this happens twice, you get sent to a border colony known as the Remote Island. Kenji Mitsuda casually goes down an alleyway, but there was too much foot traffic. As they exit, Hathaway makes the mistake of looking out the window and locking eyes with a manhunter. He taps on the car window and asks to see their residency permit. As Hathaway lowers the window, Mitsuda takes off. The hunter pulls out his pistol and yells. Gunshots go off as Mitsuda drives away. They hear a manhunter police vehicle come speeding up to them. Hathaway has to bail out. He and Mahesia will ditch the vehicle. He gets out and they take off. 3 black vans go passing by. He goes into a tourist shop and finds a souvenir, acting like a typical tourist. The book just says typical souvenir but doesn't specify. Is Hathaway a keychain kind of guy, or is he a shot glass souvenir kind of guy? Similar, albeit different, to a moment in the movie. The clerk wonders why Mafty doesn't take care of the manhunters. Hathaway says saying things like that could get you killed. The clerk tells him where to catch a taxi and he leaves. Hathaway is on edge while waiting for a taxi. Some people begin approaching him. so he decides to move on from the taxi pickup. As he walks away, someone yells, "You're violating my human rights." The manhunters tells Hathaway to wait for a taxi away from here and shoves him. Another van pulls up and they enter into a building. Gunshots go off around the 3rd floor. Men come flying out of the window and hit the ground right in front of Hathaway's eyes. He eventually is able to find a taxi that will pick him up. He tells the driver to go to the building next to the Hathaway Hotel. He begins starting up some small talk. The taxi driver says that he too wishes that Mafti would do something about the manhunters. Hathaway is somewhat relieved that the public seems to be pro-Mafti. One thing that Hathaway is surprised about is that the driver believes that Mafti has the luxury of thinking so far in the future, referring to the destruction of the Earth. But the driver doesn't have the luxury to think that far ahead. He has to focus on the here and now to survive. For Hathaway, he believes he is a byproduct to the scale at which EFF operates and allowing wars to plague the planet. A 2-degree rise in temperature, less and less land to grow food, it is only a matter of time until all of humanity will be forced into the sides. Unlike Shar and the generation before him, it isn't some new frontier and humanity won't grow, expand, or evolve. No, for Hathaway, this is a sin. This is a burden for humanity. Ultimately, humanity yearns for gravity. Humans need to go into space and let the world rest for 1,000 years. Ultimately, the goal is to return to a thriving Earth, more likely an Earth that can support 10 billion people like it once did before Universal Century. Living in the sides is simply humanity's burden for allowing the Earth to grow once again. Hathaway says that he has to make this happen for the spirits of those who died during Shar's rebellion. He recalls his exploits during Shar's counterattack and actually empathizes with Shar. Shar did calculate Axis to send Earth into a nuclear winter and not outright destroy it. Hathaway seems to understand this. Well, he understood this, or he understood Shar's self-destructive nature and foresaw his failure. Either way, his fighting spirit lives on in Hathaway. He pictures an alternate universe where the manhunters are actually heroes serving justice. The driver drops him off and eventually he walks over to the Hathaway Hotel. He has a message waiting for him stating that the Research Bureau will send a car at 10 in the morning. Gigi isn't in the room. He didn't want to run into any ministers from the Houndsend, so he orders room service. He thinks that if he is eventually arrested, he knows someone will get the Gundam. That is when Kenneth and Gigi walk in. This makes Hathaway nervous. Since he was gone, Kenneth asked Gigi out for dinner. As Gigi goes into her room, he tells Hathaway that he is stealing her from him. He tells Kenneth to go for it, as he doesn't have feelings for her in that way. But he does. He asks about the investigation. Kenneth wants him and some of the cabinet members to come in and sign the official record. Kenneth picks up his souvenir and calls it tacky. Oh, he totally bought a keychain souvenir. Kenneth looked up Hathaway's background during Shar's rebellion. He is very impressed by his skills. He tells him that he snuck onto his father's ship and caused him a lot of troubles with the EFF. Kenneth is stressed because of the garbage fire that Kimberly has left him. He is making this transition hard on Kenneth. He says that he wished he had a famous father, like Hathaway. But Hathaway suggests to him it comes with its own pressures and burdens. Gigi comes out and asks Kenneth to lace up the back of her dress. Hathaway is very jelly. Earth's surveillance network is quite weak, especially since Mafti has been taking out their surveillance satellites. 4 mobile suits fly above the water. It is the Messer. The ME-02 Messer is Mafti's mobile suit produced by Anaheim Electronics. This mobile suit takes a lot of design inspirations from Neo-Zeon, including the spiked shoulder armor and the mono-eye sensor. It also has chest intakes, which is usually a feature found on EFF mobile suits. It was developed from the Gyrodoga. The movie varies this with the Type F1 and the Type F2. Both are more or less the same, but the Type F2 has bulkier flared legs to help with hovering. Weapons include Vulcan guns, 2 beam sabers, a long beam rifle which uses E-packs, and a large shield. The Type F2 also uses mines. The Messers are riding Galsazons. The Galsazon is a subflight system used mainly with the Messer, as it can't fly in Earth's atmosphere. These are very fast, but more or less comparable to a base jabber. It has a megaparticle cannon in the front of the subflight system. They know that the Kimberly forces will be on them real soon. The pilot of the Messer Unit 2 is Galman Noble. We learn about the reality display. What they are viewing in their cockpit is just a video feed of the mobile suit's camera sensors. It also can display target data and much more. Civet Angern is piloting a Galsazon. Sounds like I'm saying a Pokemon name. One thing to note is that in this time and Universal Century, most battles take place in space. Any incident on Earth became localized conflicts. Like Like most insurgencies, you want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. This can be done via subflight system or drop missions from low Earth orbit. Because of this, UC-105 mobile suits like the Messer and EFF's Gustav Karl sucks at changing speed mid-course. Gauman's first target is the Regent Hotel. He mentions that the reality display uses some kind of AI or machine learning to analyze targets, but things like cloud coverage can mess up the system. Gauman turns on manual targeting systems and attacks the hotel. Golf is one of the Messer pilots, and his target is the EFF base targeting the Kimberly forces. Gauman's next target is the Hathaway Hotel, but he needs to buy Hathaway a little more time. He jumps off the Galsazon. Hathaway hears the hotel rumble. It is almost time. He goes to wake up Gigi. Her and Kenneth came back early from their dinner. In the anime, the two go out dancing. He informs her that they are probably going to be targeted as there are Federation government officials staying at the hotel. She asks if it is Mafty. Hathaway says, who knows? But she responds by saying, but you're Mafty. He ignores her. They head to the elevator where they run into a couple. They all head down, hoping that Mafty doesn't hit the hotel and the elevator. While heading down, Gigi begins biting Hathaway's shoulder. I too also get turned on during a terrorist attack. Hathaway is just thinking whether or not it is a wise choice to bring Gigi with him. In the movie, Hathaway thinks to himself that the other couple smells of sex. But the movie is more provocative, and it shows the sweat dripping down their bodies. Tomino, you horny dog, you. Never change. The Hathaway Hotel is eventually attacked, and the elevator stops. Hathaway pushes the emergency button. Luckily, the elevator was on the 3rd floor. They get out. Hathaway grabs Gigi and rushes towards the front, dodging panicking people along the way. Hathaway sees an EFF mobile suit and marvels at its mobility and Earth gravity. He wonders if this is Anaheim Electronics' doing. This is certainly possible with the help of the Minovsky Craft system. As we are now in the UC-100s, we are seeing technology evolve. Minovsky Craft systems essentially use eye-field technology to create a Minovsky pillow between the craft and the ground, which allows the ship to hover without the use of a fusion reactor. It has been around since the One-Year War, and we saw it on the Adsum and the Pegasus-class ships, including White Base. But Minovsky Craft systems require a huge fusion reactor, one which can't fit into a mobile suit. In UC-105, this is starting to change, and it seems that EFF is playing with Minovsky Craft systems in mobile suits. Hathaway mentions that the new Kasai Gundam tested on the moon and integrated this technology as well. More on this soon. Anaheim Electronics doing what Anaheim Electronics does, sharing other people's intellectual property. As Gauman makes his exit out of the city, he is met with EFF's new Gustav Karl. The FD-03 Gustav Karl is EFF's new mass-produced mobile suit based off of the Jagan. We saw a prototype of this version during Unicorn. This is specific to the Type 0 version, as there was no Unicorn when Hathaway's Flash was written. This is a heavy armor mobile suit that doesn't lose mobility or versatility, which is usually the case for bulky boys. This is what allowed for a bigger reactor. Weapons include Vulcan guns, a 2-tube missile launcher on the left hand, 2 beam sabers which contain an eye field, the Jagan beam rifle, and a bazooka. It also has a flexible shield. The Type 00 version from the movie has the same weapon set as the light novel. Soon, we will see the miniaturization of the fusion reactor. But before that happens, everyone started building bigger mobile suits. Gauman strafes back and forth to avoid getting hit. He then turns his back on the city, forcing the Gustav Karls to potentially hit civilians. Gauman thought this would prevent them from firing on the city, but boy was he wrong. They begin shooting at him, destroying the city around them. Gauman tries to get out of Davao as quickly as possible. He was attacked over the poorer areas of the city, but near the Hathaway, less chaos is happening. It appears they specifically don't care about the poors. Remember, we are still in an era where EFF is hired help for the rich people. He flies over the Hathaway, hoping that Esmeralda Zubin makes contact with Hathaway. Mahesia entrusted Esmeralda Zubin with getting Hathaway to safety. Unfortunately, Hathaway is thinking with his dick, and he doesn't follow the plan as he is with Gigi. Here is an interesting quote. All the while, Hathaway could feel Gigi's trembling body and felt attracted to her young and delicate body. Tomino, you horny dog, you. Esmeralda follows closely. She wonders why he is helping out a skank, not knowing the situation. She doesn't know what's going on, but at least she isn't thinking with her lady balls. Hathaway, you horny asshole. Like the movie, Esmeralda leads them into the park where Gauman is caught up in a fight with the Gustav Karls. In the movie, Hathaway hilariously drags a limp Gigi throughout the battlefield. Esmeralda shoved a paper in Hathaway's pocket and flees. Gigi is catatonic with fear and won't let him go, even though he wants to escape. Gauman seems to have been defeated, and EFF surrounds their location. He gets out of the messer with his hands up as EFF surrounds him. A base jabber lands near the park. One of the soldiers tells the other to be careful as this is their first Mafty prisoner. Hathaway puts his jacket over a cold Gigi. In the movie, he puts his jacket over her before dragging her limp body through the park. Kenneth steps out of the base jabber and confronts Gigi. He allows her in the base jabber where it is warmer. The sun begins to rise. Kenneth says, "Not bad for my first day on the job." Kimberly has made EFF look weak. He wants to interrogate this new prisoner to see where they are getting their weapons. Kenneth says he will deal with the prisoner personally. As Kenneth handles business, Hathaway heads into the base jabber with Gigi. She offers him some coffee, and she puts her head in his lap. He ducks his head so Gauman doesn't see him. In the movie, he hasn't entered the base jabber yet, and he and Gauman look each other in the eyes. They will have a similar interaction soon in the light novel. He tries to overhear what EFF is saying to Gauman. He seems to be holding it together quite well when faced with hostility. They take him away. Kenneth asks if the two have their cards. Gigi somehow passed out in Hathaway's lap. He pulls out the card he was given earlier. Kenneth says this makes them guests of the Federation, and they will be taken care of. The Gustav Karl latches on to the base jabber. EFF heads out to find Hathaway and Gigi's luggage. This isn't a normal base jabber. This is the base jabber Caesarea. The BJK-232 Caesarea is a new subflight system used by EFF and the Kimberly forces. There isn't really ever too much of a difference between subflight system upgrades, besides general enhancements. It has a rocket launcher and 2 beam cannons and can operate via the mobile suit or independently. The base jabber makes its way towards Davao base. Mafty hit the base during his attack as well. This is the first time Hathaway is getting a good view of the base, as he wasn't able to see it from the Hound's End. Just as Mafty was about to acquire their own mobile suit, so too does the Kimberly force have something of equal power. Kenneth tells Hathaway that Kimberly is an Owen belly and won't leave until he ousts the rebels in the area. He takes out his riding whip and begins slapping it against his hand. What a power move, bringing a riding whip to your work. I kinda want to try this. The base jabber lands. Hathaway wakes up Gigi, and they get out of the base jabber. This is when Hathaway and Gauman make eye contact. An EFF soldier is being rough with him. Hathaway tells him to not be so rough. Kenneth approaches Hathaway and says he is being nice because they were on the Hound's End together. But if he interrupts EFF affairs again, he will beat Hathaway. I don't think Tamino realized when he first wrote this novel that Kenneth saying beat while holding a whip comes off more erotic than menacing. Hathaway says that Mafty is becoming a modern-day Joan of Arc. Kenneth says that Joan of Arc was burned at the stake, which is what he intends to do. Kenneth gets a car for Gigi and Hathaway, and the three drive off. As they drive off, a new model flies down, silhouetting against the sun. Kenneth tells the mobile suit pilot to get out over the radio. This is Penelope. The RX-104FF Penelope is a 5th generation mobile suit that can achieve independent flight and greatly improves operation under Earth's gravity. This is greatly in part due to the fixed flight, or FF unit. The base of this unit is the Odysseus Gundam. The fixed flight system makes it turn into Penelope. This also has a Minovsky craft system, which is now small enough to be put in mobile suits. Remember, this creates a Minovsky particle pillow that allows a craft to float. The evolution of this technology is the Minovsky barrier, which Penelope deploys when it transforms into its bird mode. It also has funnel missiles, which the pilot can control via a highly accurate Psychomu system. Its megaparticle cannons surpass the high mega cannon found on Double Zeta. Other weapons include a beam rifle, Vulcan guns on its bird head, megaparticle cannons, a shield, and a beam saber. The pilot comes down. Kenneth begins yelling at the pilot. He says to shoot to kill next time, or he will take Penelope away. This is lane aim. He heads back to the mobile suit to run maintenance checks. Kenneth says that good test pilots make poor workers. Hathaway mentions that he was the same when he stole a mobile suit during Char's rebellion. EFF provided Gigi and Hathaway with rooms on the base. Gigi later comes to Hathaway's room with clothes for him that she bought at the base shopping center, courtesy of EFF. But she doesn't hang out. She gives him the clothes and takes off. He can't get a read on her. 30 minutes later, someone named Wave shows Hathaway to the cafeteria for breakfast. As he passes through the corridor, he tries to memorize as much of the base as possible. He knows they are in the northern part of the base, and most likely Gauman is being held in the southern part of the base. As he waits for Gigi in the cafeteria, he notices officers coming, eating, and leaving quickly. An operation must be underway. He never thought he would be eating with the enemy. Gigi comes in. He was waiting for her. To quote the novel, as the clothes were brought from the shopping center on base, it was inevitably casual, yet she looked quite good. Bandai went on to take this quote and sell it to you for around $350. Wave informs the two that Kenneth is running late, but he wants to join them. Hathaway is also informed that the Bureau of Investigation will talk to him at 10. Kenneth eventually comes to their table. He is changing the name of his new team to the Circe Corps. It is named after the daughter of the sun god Helios in the Odyssey. Hathaway notes that Kenneth is being a hipster to impress Gigi. She says that it is a strong name, but not as strong as Mafty. Kenneth begins flirting with Gigi and asks her out. He says that she is a goddess and having sex with him will bring his unit good luck. Wait, did I read that right? Gigi, you're a goddess of fortune, so if you sleep with me, the Circe unit will become the essence of Circe. Well, that's a bold move. During the movie, Gigi eats like a normal person, but in the novel it says that she uses an egg holder like it's a Warner Brothers cartoon from the 50s. I guess they're trying to make her out to seem very posh. Kenneth tells his subordinate to send the 4th Squadron while Gigi gets up and leaves after Kenneth's comment. He turns to Hathaway and says, "Let me tell you, I will wreck that woman. Do you hear me? I will wreck her." The dialogue is actually more clinical and awkward. It would have actually been better if he was an asshole. Japanese men need to work on their game. Hathaway says that Gigi has a glass heart and a fresh young body. What is this dialogue? You know, I think diving into the light novels was a mistake. He says that he will be leaving after he talks to the Investigation Bureau. He goes to take a nap until then. Before leaving, Hathaway wonders why don't they just prevent the ministers from coming to Earth. But Kenneth says that it isn't easy as they all have families down on Earth. Kenneth says this genuinely, without a sense of irony to the fact that the Manhunters does this exact same thing to the Poors. Hathaway doesn't say this out loud. Everyone seems to be on Mafty's side on Earth, but Kenneth reminds him that 300 people have died by their hands. 18 Federation ministers were killed in the past 24 hours. Mafty's words hold strong to the hearts of the Earthnoids, that their words can create many rebels in the process. Kenneth actually understands where Mafty is coming from, but he is going to follow his orders. Hathaway says that a man who knows of the facts, but still is willing to carry out their orders is quite a fearsome enemy, and he needs to be careful. Hathaway sleeps for 2 hours before talking to Geis from the Investigation Bureau. The only thing he ended up asking was where was Hathaway sitting on the Houndsman. Geis seems to have the same concerns that Kenneth has. He believes that Mafty's ideas will spread fast, creating small rebel insurgencies to break out. Before leaving, Hathaway says that the general consensus for Mafty is positive, right? Geis hesitates and says, well, they are terrorists, so it is only a matter of time until they are taken down. He totally dodges the question. After he is finished, he goes to see Kenneth one final time before taking off. He was talking to his subordinates, including Lane Aim. Kenneth gives him an official document to sign off on his testimony. He thinks that Hathaway would make for a great pilot. He says that he is more into manual labor. Kenneth thought that he saw a new type in Hathaway. He wonders if during Char's rebellion, he ever came across the Alpha Izeru. Of course, Hathaway has been spending his adult life trying to repress those memories. He tells Kenneth of the girl that he once loved and who he had to shoot down. He never thought of himself as a new type. He knows, though, that Quest certainly was one. It was just his attraction to her that drove him to get into the mobile suit and ultimately kill Quest. Kenneth says that Amado Ray felt something similar in battle, which unlocked his new type potential. Hathaway asserts that he is just the father of a war hero and nothing more. Kenneth says after he takes down Mafty, the two of them should go trolling together. I didn't know trolling was a fishing term, and I thought they were about to commit online hate crimes. He wonders if he wants to say goodbye to Good Game before he leaves. He says that he'll regret it. Kenneth wonders, don't you find it odd that she came to Earth without a permanent residence? Kenneth checked the location of the address she gave EFF. It happened to be an abandoned building. As he leaves, Kenneth reminds him that the Circe team will take down Mafty. Hathaway chuckles and makes his leave. Kenneth arranged a limo to take Hathaway to a shopping center in Davao. He still wonders why Gigi hasn't said anything to Kenneth. An NCO drives him towards the shopping center with another sitting next to him. He gets out and heads to the Touring Information Center and finds a locker to store his luggage. He pretends to be a tourist and buys some gifts before heading to meet with one of his contacts. That is when the Mafty message is broadcasted to the world. He notes that this isn't his voice, but he was present during the recording. I urge the people living on Earth to understand that we live in an era where it is considered a crime to reside on the planet's surface, says the recorded message. Some of the citizens yell, claiming it is Mafty's fault, but many talk about how EFF did more damage defending than Mafty did in their attack. He leaves the shopping district and wonders if Kenji was caught by the Manhunters. He heads out to the port of Davao. This pretending is starting to get to Hathaway. He wants to run to his destination, but he has to play this game. He begins thinking of Quest. That is when one of the kids selling boat rides to tourists tells him that he could give him a ride to Neijin. He takes him up on the offer and struggles to get on his canoe. It turns out that a woman paid the kid earlier to get Hathaway on his canoe. He was told to paddle out for 30 minutes and they will find them. It causes Hathaway to fly off the canoe. The two have a conversation about whether Mafty's ideas of leaving the Earth is the right thing. Hathaway tells him that EFF controls who can and can't come in and out of Earth. The kid says that space noids believe that being on Earth will make you happy, but they leave out the part about being a slave to the Federation. Since Hathaway is one of the few privileged people that gets to travel to Earth, he asks the kid if he hates him. The kid says life is easier letting the unknown remain unknown and letting the dumb remain dumb. More people should take this quote to heart. He says that it's not that they are dumb. It's merely dumb to have knowledge of things that don't serve them, specifically the common man on Earth being oppressed by the Federation. Hathaway thinks that a trolling boat is approaching them. It happens to be Kenji and Emeralda. He switches places with Kenji and informs him that they should probably retrieve his luggage from Deval's shopping center. He gets on the boat to realize that it is a hydrofoil boat. Also on the boat is Iram Massam and Raymond Kane. Emeralda says, "So, is Gigi your new girlfriend or something?" I'm glad someone is giving him a hard time, but Hathaway ignores it and mentions that Gigi figured out that he is Mafty. Emeralda thinks that this means Kenneth let him go on purpose. She and Aram are mad at him. He says, no, it's only about 25% driven by my boner. The other 75%, he says, is a new type intuition that is unexplainable. Whatever it is, Hathaway is certain Gigi won't tell Kenneth. It's fine, trust him. Aram says, I don't trust you. They are not happy about this, knowing she is a point of failure. Mahesia was able to make it out of the city as well. They need to focus on the Gundam and Gauman. Raymond is certain that Gauman won't snitch, even if given truth serum. Hathaway gives Iram the microfilm. One thing that came out of all of this is that Kenneth was distracted by the Owen Belly forces, so they most likely aren't onto them. He believes that Owen Belly caused the Houndsdon hijack. Earlier, Mahesia said that Quacksalver didn't know of Owen Belly's plans. He wonders if this mysterious contact, Quacksalver, has anything to do with this. He also wonders how they could get 30,000 people on their side, like what is happening in Owen Belly. Mafty is maybe only 2,000 strong. Since 4 cabinet members were killed this morning, they're moving the Federation meeting somewhere else, or possibly postponing it, originally to be in Adelaide. As of now, EFF thinks this is one force. Kenneth will soon learn that they aren't as big as EFF thinks. They wonder if the pilot of Penelope is a cyber new type. He isn't sure about that yet. Quacksalver seems to be backing Mafty and is the one who chose the location to receive the Gundam. They dock at Cape St. Augustine and go to the rest of the way by boat. Hathaway calls Quacksalver the true mastermind behind Mafty. The only thing that makes Mafty hesitant is that Quacksalver means fake doctor in Dutch. They get into the float plane and fly out. Hathaway notes that companies like Anaheim Electronics can't be trusted. They have reached a time where they are at the mercy of conglomerates. Stop being relevant to modern times, stupid light novel that sexualizes twiggy blonde chicks. Hathaway eventually notes that history repeats itself. Awesome, no progress. It seems that Star Trek was right. It really seems like you need something on the level of matter synthesization to break the cycle of corporate greed. Even robots and colonies can't break it. Kenneth has been busy, but he gives some time to have lunch with Gigi. He apologizes for keeping her waiting. She says she is used to waiting. Oh, she's spicy. She wonders why Hathaway left without saying goodbye. Kenneth gets her a cottage until he is able to take her to Hong Kong. She bluntly says this isn't going to get him anything. I'm not opening up my legs for you, Kenneth. She's more into terrorists anyways. He prods about her being on the Houndsdon. She accessed Cardius Boundin Wooden's terminal to purchase a ticket. He wonders who he is to her. She flat out says that she is in an intimate relationship with Boundin Wooden. He is the founder of a major insurance company. He bought her a new house in Hong Kong. Gigi refers to him as a count. This is something that the public doesn't know about, but Kenneth does, being privy to EFF information. He is taken aback by this knowledge and feels a little defeated. She laughs and says, somewhere along the line, you thought I was a Mafty informant, didn't you? She says she will take her leave after they eat. Kenneth still thinks of her as a goddess of Davao after the luck the Kimberly forces have had. He mentions that her comments to Hathaway helped him take down the hijackers, and he was able to take down a Mafty mobile suit. She says that Hathaway is dense and keeps avoiding her. In both the movie and the light novel, this triggers Kenneth's curiosity. Remember, she sensed that Hathaway was Mafty and told him the terrorists weren't the real Mafty on the Houndsdon. In the movie, this was specifically communicated through new type senses, coming from someone who takes superstition seriously as a military man. He asks her if he sensed something about Hathaway. He uses his wrist communicator and informs his men of something. He begins to take his leave. Gigi changes her mind and takes him up on the offer to stay at the cottage. She wants to see how this plays out now that he seems to know Hathaway is Mafty. In the light novel, this conversation happens again in the officer's cafeteria. area. But in the movie, it happens in Kenneth's office after getting Gigi's official testimony. Lodosia is the name of Mafty's secret base in the area, named after the scientific name of a sea coconut. It is an old EFF dry dock. Hathaway suggests that Quacksalver once worked in supply chain logistics for EFF, and things can easily go missing. He is a magician to Hathaway. Hidden under a dummy forest are Galsazons and a booster bed. Hathaway talks to Maximilian Nikolai, the chief mechanic. This operation is under the disguise of a fishing boat. He laughs. They suddenly get a red alert. There is a sub in the area, but there are no subs in Davau's EFF forces. They received a non-encrypted message from Owenbelly declaring that they are Mafty's first army and request support from Mafty himself. They are being attacked by Gustav Karls. Owenbelly is starting to become a burden. Quack is located at a satellite base that even Hathaway doesn't know the location. He thanks Mahesia and wonders how long it will take. She says from Davao it will take 40 minutes on a Casaria. From Owenbelly, 2 hours. They have just enough operation time. No margin of error can be made before EFF arrives. He gets in the Galceon with Emeralda and Raymond. An explosion goes off as others handle the submarine. It's time for them to make their move. Kenneth begins intimidating the police, demanding police data to be transferred to the Federation. He has base jabbers, Gustav Karls, and Penelope on standby. The sub is under Minovsky particle density, so it takes time for him to get data back. He has eyes and ears everywhere. Kenneth finally goes into an interrogation room where they're holding Galman Noble. He asks what Hathaway has to do with Mafty. He sarcastically, but also truthfully, says that Hathaway is Mafty. This causes Kenneth to hit him. In the movie, he asks one more time, and Galman says that Mafty is the ghost of Shar Aznable. He is stoic to all other questions thrown at him. Kenneth plans on using Galman in their next assault. If things go south, they will use him as a shield. He will be with Lane Aim. Lane says that he isn't a terrorist and guarantees his safety in his hands. What a liar. They sink the sub to find that it is a sub from the old century. This causes them to launch from Laodicea sooner than they planned. They attack the booster bed to the Galcazon and launch at a 40-degree angle due west. They break the sound barrier. An ancient capsule from the shuttle days enters into Earth's atmosphere. He leaves making contact with the capsule to Emeralda. Xi Gundam hasn't been tested on Earth yet. They jettison the booster bed and launch the Messer. Emeralda is able to make contact with the capsule, but with Kenneth onto them, they had to move sooner. Emeralda disconnects from the capsule once Hathaway makes contact. Kenneth and his men are making their way to their location. Like the movie, Hathaway says that his head is a mess and wonders if Gigi is messing with him. Lane Aim begins shooting at the capsule until Kasai Gundam bursts out. The RX-105 Kasai Gundam is a 5th generation mobile suit constructed by Anaheim Electronics. It will be used by Mafty specifically for the ministry meeting in Adelaide. Unlike Penelope, which was built off of parts from 4th gen units, Kasai is considered the first true 5th gen mobile suit made entirely of new components. Its main weapons are the funnel missiles. These are Psychomu guided missiles that can change direction and track enemies even under Minovsky particle density. In the movie, we see the equipment index, which shows that they have 80 missiles to work with. Only 10 can be equipped at a time, however. This mobile suit also has a flight form which can reach Mach 2. But this is only in the movie. In the light novel, it just creates a beam barrier and floats in mobile suit form. Other weapons include a beam rifle that can destroy the Gustav Karl in one shot, a beam saber similar to New Gundam's beam saber, triple missiles, a shield, and a secondary beam cannon. Lane is amazed it was able to dodge his attack. This is due to the Minovsky craft system in these new units. Kasai looks chonky, but it floats like a pillow. Hathaway fires a megaparticle cannon. This emits light in the darkness, and he sees the reflection of 6 Gustav Karls making their way towards him. Gustav Karls don't have Minovsky craft systems, so they can only get 1 or 2 attacks in before they fall back towards Earth. Hathaway is able to take one mobile suit down. He takes out one of the Kasarias, causing the Gustav Karls to fall back to Earth. One thing that this light novel does focus on is the contact communicator. When 2 mobile suits are close to one another, they have an open communication line. Galman yells out to fall back as the 2 Gundams fight with beam sabers. Hathaway asks if Galman is a prisoner or a traitor. Aim Lame says yes, he is using him as a shield. Hathaway finds this behavior sickening. He wants Aim to release him. Lane says fine, you could have him. Like the movie, he kicks Galman out of Penelope. Hathaway zooms in on the monitor to see that Galman is in freefall. He adjusts Kasai to match his speed and catches Galman. Once secured, he attacks Penelope. Hathaway has to finish this fast or he will accidentally kill Galman from flopping around in the cockpit. Hold on tight. In the light novel, Lane says that he doesn't know what happened, and in the blink of an eye, Kasai Gundam was right beside him. In the movie, he uses the water and the beam rifle as a distraction to get behind him. Both the movie and the light novel explain later, however, that he used the beam rifle as a distraction post-mission. Hathaway fires the missile pods. Lane tries to take them out, but the barrage hits Penelope, crashing it into the ocean. He blows open the hatch of his downed Gundam floating in the ocean. He can't believe he was bested. Using the rifle as a distraction, they were able to get out of this quickly. If the battle lasted longer than one beam blast, Galman would be dead from bouncing around the cockpit like a dog in a dragon. Kariah, everyone celebrates. Hathaway meets with Kariah Dace. She is described as having short hair but never being mistaken for a boy. She has returned from her assignment in Hong Kong. She teases Hathaway about having so many love interests, while saying it seductively in his ear. At the base, Kenneth tells Gigi that Lane survived because of her luck. She plans on leaving in a few days, so her luck will be gone soon. He says that's okay, because he will have this Owen belly issue solved by then. Gigi is in the cottage that Kenneth set up for her. She thinks about Hathaway. Being a person who sells her body to older men, the youthful energy of Hathaway and Kenneth invigorates her. We starting out like this? Already? Hold on, let me take my pants off. One of the maids brings Gigi some food. She is spending the evening alone. She chose to stay at the cottage instead of a hotel because she knew this would be further away from the base. Since the rise in temperatures, people started moving into colonies. People close to the equator were some of the first to move. Of course, some stayed for nature preservation reasons. But over time, these areas, including Davao, became a tourist destination, which means an increase in Spacenoid illegal immigration to Earth and a rise in anti-Federation activism. EFF created a force to find Spacenoids and send them back into space, usually in some mining colony, or placed into indentured servitude. These became known as the Manhunters. Of course, EFF was smart to keep them smaller in numbers as to not create another Titans. The rich elites and EFF dignitaries saw the Manhunters as a benefit to them. The oligarchy and Universal Century is slowly reaching for more and more power, and they are getting it. Gigi is certain that Hathaway will be meeting up with the Owen Belly forces. She is also certain Hathaway is this wannabe Gundam she overheard Kenneth's team talking about. Mafty is on the Valiant. We never talked about the Valiant last volume, but the Valiant is a high-density ore carrier. Inside of the ship is converted to be Mafty's command center. It can store the Gundam along with Messers and Galcizons. Nothing more is known about this boat, but we can assume it has an array of sensors and is capable of conducting recon. Laying low seems to be the motto of Mafty, and this ship is no different. A shirtless Sharchai Coleman and Joseph Seedy is trying to make contact with Owen Belly. They just assume their comms are currently down. Davao, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong all have an increase in radio chatter. It was almost time for them to move out. He is handed radio transcriptions from Guangzhou about police and military forces gathering. Hathaway looks up to see 6 mobile suits. He meets with Kariah. She isn't all too happy that they are heading out to Owen Belly, as they are still a very small force. She wants to know what happened between him and Gigi. He tells her the same response he gave in his report, but she and no other Mafty member seems to be buying it. She finds him to be immature. He wanted to tell her that he has intense feelings that goes beyond the opposite sex. This is a new type connection, and one that new types find hard to explain. Instead, he decides to be blunt and rude and tells her to leave him alone to do his work. She turns around and walks away towards the bow of the ship. Hathaway mentions that she cut her hair terribly short, which is due to her last-minute decision-making skills. Wait, in Volume 1 you said that her hair was short, but you would never confuse her for a man. Which one is it, Tamino? Which one is it? Hathaway thinks about Char's rebellion and the death of Quest once again. He constantly spirals and puts himself in these states of despair. He reflects on the fact that it is because of his dad that he is able to come to Earth as a biological observer. Nepotism is the name of the game these days. He says that Earth is a perpetual breeding ground for endless exceptions, which is a great line. I'm stealing it. He is self-aware that he is feeding off the problems he is trying to solve. Hathaway grew up in Hong Kong. He was living all alone, studying to become a biological observer. I assume Mirai and Shaman have moved to Londinian by this time. During this era, he met Kariah. She even lived with him. They could never get married, however, because she is a filthy, undocumented Spacenoid immigrant. Then he learned of the person calling himself Quacksalver through his professor. Quacksalver was previously a general in the Federation. He originally regretted that Hathaway's dad worked for EFF still. He learned a lot about the Earth from Quacksalver, things that they never tell you in the colonies. EFF's privileged class makes up 68% of all citizens on Earth, as EFF simultaneously deports hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants per year. Quacksalver reinvigorated Hathaway's desire to be a pilot once again. Hathaway and Kariah were eventually going to elope, but Hathaway became a central figure to Mafty, and the two eventually split up. Now Kariah helps out occasionally with Mafty's needs. Also with the Valiant is the Sealac, which is a similar ship converted for combat use. The captain of the Valiant is Brink's Wedge. Galcizons are good to go on the Sealac. In Mafty, rank and duty are one and the same. This could be a good or a bad thing. Sometimes rank and leadership plays a vital role. They should be in Owenbelly by sundown. Even though the Owenbelly forces aren't officially MAFTI, they are too big to ignore. The Messers and Galcazons launch. Hathaway is waiting for Julia Suga, the mechanic, to finish her repairs. She is essentially flaunting her boobs in Hathaway's face. She is super fit because Hathaway is constantly commenting on her lean body as she moves around in the cockpit. Tomino, you horny dog, you. She is against helping Owenbelly, but they can't afford to wait for them to attack, and they need to strike first. He focuses his mind on her nipples before telling her to put on a shirt. How are they going to handle this scene in the movie? He gets into the Gundam and dives underwater. This is the first time Hathaway has been underwater in a mobile suit. He submerges to test the Gundam. Julia and her team work non-stop since the Gundam came into MAFTI's possession. The seawater makes the machine a little sluggish. The engineers need to step up their hydrodynamic skills. He is 300 meters underwater. Hathaway makes a subtle comment that man is able to conquer space easier than conquering the oceans. Meaning in Universal Century, much of the depths of the oceans are still a mystery. It's easier to free the soul from gravity than to conquer it. It thrusts out of the ocean where he meets up with the Galcazons. Karaya looks up and thinks this is a mission where Hath may not come back. She calls him Hath. She goes onto the bridge where there is a silence. They establish radio communication once again to see things aren't looking good for the team heading into battle. Karaya wants to be put on an away mission. The two ships are moving to their next support point. She runs into Julia and says, "Bitch, put your tits away." She admits that she says this out of jealousy. Due to Minovsky particle dispersion, they have rendezvous points where they can resupply. This was necessary due to their lack of manpower. Many people rely on scanners and sensors, that they forget how to do basic intelligence gathering in the real world. Karaya thinks about a war in Vietnam before Universal Century. The side with the fancy weapons didn't in fact win the guerrillas, similar to the Vietnam War of our time. This is how MAFTI operates in many ways. The dangers of modern times lie in the systems that support such convenience. Man has become less imaginative as technology evolves. As they pass the Basar Islands, the two boats split off, heading to separate rendezvous points. Hathaway believes that he will never see good game again. Their altitude is 150 meters as they pass by the islands and head through the swamplands and into Owenbelly. If the Kimberly forces are expecting them, they will use the Owenbelly Mountains as a shield. Are they expecting them, though? They descend and prepare for combat. Kasai Gundam gets out and takes the lead. Now this is great. If you are like me, I look up all the locations to see if they are real or made up in Universal Century. Owenbelly doesn't exist, but Owenpelly is a real place in Australia. Hathaway mentions that in the old century, when the Federation government was establishing global immigration policies, they wrote down Owenbelly instead of Owenpelly, and it has forever been named Owenbelly. This is hilarious and a great representation of the bureaucratic nightmare that is EFF. They start seeing smoke as they descend. They can't get a visual on the city, but they note that there are bogies in the area. It is the Kimberly forces. Kasai fires off some missiles as the Galcazons and Messers fly behind the mountains for cover. There is nothing but fire and smoke. Is this what's left of Owenbelly? The Gundam activates a sand barrel barrier, which wasn't explained during the Gundam breakdown, but they are particles that deploy around the Gundam and function as anti-missile defenses. He takes some video footage and meets up with Raymond Kane and Gauman on the Galcazon 1. He lets them know that Owenbelly forces are all but wiped out. They have to leave now. They examine the recorded footage to see hundreds of dead bodies. They wonder if Kimberly is panicking because of Kenneth. Emeralda shows the team the printouts. Hendrix Hio thinks that they are in Jabiru waiting for them. Jabiru is 57 kilometers south of Owenbelly. Rod Hine, a pilot of Messer 7, took some photos to show that Owenbelly had decent forces. Messer Pilot 6, Harlem Morley, says that there is a tent city on the outskirts of town, which was also wiped out. This is what the Valiant Bridge crew were looking at when radars came back up. They noticed that there are 10 mobile suits not far out and plan to take action, even though it is still nighttime. The pilots were ready for a fight anyways. However, this intel gathering cost them about 10 minutes. Who knows how many more people will die while they travel south. They all head out. As they pass by the mountain range, they notice there are actually 12 Gustav Karls from the Kimberly forces heading their way. 6 of them go directly for the Gundam. This is no problem as the Gundam tears through 6 with ease, causing the remaining 6 to retreat. As they retreat, Hathaway picks off 1, and the Messer takes down 2. So only 3 were able to escape without their Kasarias. No self-light system means they have to boost jump all the way back to base. Sucks to be them. The team continues to push south through Owenbelly. Gigi gets a call from Kenneth from the cottage. She informs Kenneth that she wants to head to Hong Kong tomorrow and wonders if there is a plane available. She wants to see how this plays out, but she also has to handle things for the Count. Kenneth says that he will have a C-38 ready for her tomorrow. At first I thought this was a C-38 Courier used by the Navy, but this was deployed in 1997, and this was written in the late 80s and early 90s. So I assume this should be a C-88, and it was an editorial issue. C-88 is the updated Medea, first seen in War in the Pocket. She asks him to come over, but he is busy dealing with Federation ministers for the Federation meeting in Adelaide. Gigi comments that he should have time since there have been so many people coming and going from the base. Kenneth's tone changes and he starts questioning Gigi. He wonders if she is keeping track of him. She wonders why she would do that, and Kenneth bluntly says, for Hathaway. This was a tactic to see how she would react. But she says, dude, I can see the cottage from the base. However, this contradicts what she said last time about strategically being far away from the base to avoid being watched. He says that he can't have fun tonight, but he will pick her up tomorrow. Gigi says that he is welcome to dream about her if he likes. Oh yeah, a woman giving a man a compliment. He could live off of that for years. Heh, gross. Mafty goes south where they find even more of a massacre. Emeralda and 2 other female crewmates are horrified at a female prisoner who isn't divulging any information. They don't really describe the woman, just the reaction to people looking at her. So we could probably assume dismemberment of some sort. Another person being held as a prisoner is Captain Kimberly Heyman, the commander of the original Kimberly unit. He is acting tough around the Mafty forces. Galman wonders if they should resort to torture. Hathaway says he would leave it to the Owenbelly forces if that were the case. He tells Kimberly that the Owenbelly forces have nothing to do with Mafty. He says that the consequences will catch up with him. The former commander pleads for his life and says that they hacked up bodies. So we did the same essentially. Hathaway just sees a child in front of him with command tactics fueled by emotional reaction. Hathaway suggests that they treat their captives with the utmost care. Galman thinks that because they aren't a part of the Cersei unit, they won't provide any value to them and wants to kill them. But Hathaway thinks that if they provide a fraction of value, then it is worth keeping them alive. They head down the corridor to another room to find Fabio Rivera. He had a thick Spanish accent. He realizes that this is the man that was pretending to be Mafty. They found a gap in the Federation and exploited it by creating a local air force in the area. Hathaway tells him that real leaders don't hide behind false identities. What they experienced here in Owenbelly is a slaughter. He needs to take accountability for what has happened here. He shrugs off Hathaway's comments. Fabio mentions that his people recorded a video of the massacre that occurred here in Owenbelly. Someone is on their way to space to expose the Federation to the colonies. One of Fabio's subordinates speaks up and tells Mafty that Kimberly's forces were playing with them in their mobile suits. They were enjoying killing their forces. Another person makes fun of them and says they are no different than Kimberly. Galman gets mad, but Hathaway pulls him out of the room for a moment. Hathaway says that what Quacksalver used to fear was that emotions run high when making important decisions. Hathaway makes the call to pull out. Owenbelly forces have roughly 5,000 forces remaining throughout Owenbelly. Last episode we learned they had 20,000. Ouch, 75% loss is rough. Remember, these were the people responsible for the Houndsend hijacking. They wonder what Mafty's next move is. All he says is that they will simply eliminate Federation cabinet members. Fabio tells him that they plan on hitching a ride to Guangzhou, as they believe the Federation meeting is moving from Adelaide to this new location in China. They said that they intercepted a message from Hundley Yokson of the criminal police organization that suggests they are moving. This message was intercepted while they were on the Houndsend. Hathaway believes that the Federation are old cronies who wouldn't even be bothered to change location. Fabio scoffs at him and says now who is being sloppy. Mafty makes their leave from Owenbelly. Kenneth makes his way to the cottage to pick up Gigi. He tells her that they missed their chance to get Mafty and Owenbelly yesterday. He wonders why he, a 30-something-year-old, is interested in a 19-year-old girl. He realizes that someone like Mace Flowers, the flight attendant on the Houndsend, is probably more his style, and probably more age-appropriate. He is going to try to give her a call when he gets the time. I'm going to ignore Kenneth's thoughts of defiling Gigi during the drive. I need a break from calling Tomino a horny dog. You horny dog. He finds Gigi to be an enigma. He tells her that men can think very unilaterally, so her intuition is very intriguing to him. She can't explain something that is simply intuitive to her. She asks if he could give her Hathaway's address. Of course, he already promised Hathaway he would do so. The two talk about the differences between new types and old types as Kenneth starts to realize that she may be a new type. He mentions that old types are impatient and they try to rush human progress. Gigi says even Mafty. For a moment, Kenneth wonders if Hathaway could be Mafty, but he brushes it off real quick. They arrive at the base and Gigi gets onto a cargo plane, so probably a C-88. There are other cabinet members on board as well. She overhears two of the men talking. She hears the words, Adelaide. Gigi makes it to Hong Kong. The ensign who drops her off suggests tipping the driver so they don't try to rob her. He mentions that this is because of the Federation crackdown in this area. This is an important comment because this area was previously an autonomous area where the Federation wasn't allowed to have any presence. Since the attack by the Psycho Gundam decades earlier, it appears the Federation has slowly been encroaching on the area. The ensign sends her off and heads back to the base where he plans on picking up 2 ministers and Mace Flowers. She is planning on hosting the ministers on their journey to the meeting. And by planning, I mean Kenneth probably gave her a job just so he could try to have sex with her. And he does, which we'll talk about next episode. Gigi notes that this city is almost as clean as the colonies. She arrives to her apartment. The concierge escorts her through the property, during which she mentions something fascinating. She says that throughout the old century and through universal century, globalism is at an all-time high, and thus more and more multicultural families are being created. Over time, culture became homogenous, and soon many cultures and ethnicities were slowly disappearing. Now people try to preserve what little culture is left. It isn't said out loud, but I assume culture is, let's just say, influenced by the Federation. Culture typically grows naturally or out of necessity. Later that night, she was already at work ordering furniture and wallpapers, getting the place ready for the Count. She later gets naked and takes a bath, while thinking of that one time Hathaway saw her naked. This calms her down and allows her to get a good night's sleep. Tomino, this is crossing male fantasy territory. Just wait till we get to the original Gundam novel. That is when we see Tomino at full cringe. Mafty makes their way back to the Valiant. Hathaway finds out that Karaya and Julia are heading to Darwin. He mentions that he felt a relief that she was gone, and then felt bad that he felt that way. He says he has a lot of growing to do. He wants to set aside these human needs. But for some reason he can't get Gigi off his mind like he can Karaya. She was sent out to scout the area before the Federation meeting. Darwin and Adelaide are literally on opposite sides of Australia. Minovsky particle dispersion over Guangzhou, Hong Kong, and Davao leads some suspicion of change, and they are certain Fabio's unit will be moving towards Guangzhou. But they have intel to suggest that things are still going down in Adelaide. At that same time in Hong Kong, Gigi wakes up and decides to call Hathaway. She heads out to the streets to find a payphone. She suspects that Kenneth may have tapped her phone. Payphones in the future. How quaint. She calls and asks for Hathaway, but the person on the other line says that he is currently away. She asks if this is Amada Manson. She tells him that she is Gigi and to pass on this message to Hathaway. She says, ask him if we could have our next date in Adelaide. He is somewhat confused, but he tells her that he has to wait until Hathaway contacts him. Gigi mentions to Amada to hurry or she may go running off to Kenneth. As she heads back to her apartment, she sees the news showing a mass killing in Davao done by the Manhunters and the Circe unit. She heads back and spends the next day finishing the furnishings, but she recognizes this simply isn't right. She constantly had Kenneth and Hathaway on her mind. She decides her fate is set. She has to leave the Count. She leaves a note for the Count and takes the small bag and departs from the apartment forever. She mentions that she may be walking into her own demise. The Valiant is heading towards Banao Harbor, near Darwin's coast. They don't plan on making contact with Karaya until they are able to properly hide the ship off the coast. Hathaway asks if they received any messages from the professor. He is informed that Gigi, in fact, sent a message suggesting that the meeting is taking place in Adelaide. This moment, I think, is supposed to confirm that Hathaway was right about Adelaide, but it comes off like he is getting way too turned on around Sharchai Coleman and his men. Workplace erections. They get word that Fabio may actually be heading towards Australia. Mafty resupplies at Banao Harbor. They relay a message back to Ladoichia. They must be careful about Alice Springs during their journey. They might be able to get the jump on the Circe unit, but they also don't have too many units to work with, so they have to be careful. Hathaway says that they must make it to Adelaide or face defeat. When asked what's the reward, he says nothing but satisfaction that we did our best. So just like most American jobs. Lane aim is securing Penelope onto Casaria. He is disgusted by the sight of a woman. Kenneth brought Gigi onto the base against protocol. He grabs one of the mechanic's binoculars to get a closer look at Gigi. He mentions that he finds the other girl, Mace Flowers, to be hotter. This means that Mace went out with Kenneth. This is totally Kenneth's move with the ladies, isn't it? Hey, check out my base and some mobile suits. The Circe unit heads towards Australia. As Kenneth is preparing defenses for the Adelaide conference with Chief Police Officer Hunley Yoksum, Gigi just randomly makes her appearance at the base. Kenneth wasn't expecting her to just show up. Mace Flowers is also making her way to their location with some Federation ministers. They head to his office. He is feeling worn down by everything going on. He is heading to Adelaide soon, so she says she will stay at Hathaway's place in Monado for now. After seeing the attacks on Davao in the news by the Manhunters, she doesn't feel safe there. While in the office, a secretary walks in and is silent and confused. Behind her comes in Mace Flowers. Mace and Gigi talk while Kenneth handles business. The two passively aggressively jab at one another. Gigi tells Mace that she is Kenneth's good luck charm, as she could sense that Mace and Kenneth had sex. She just outright asks if he is good in bed. This causes Mace to slap Gigi. No one saw the slap, but everyone heard it. She gets up and says she is heading back to Hong Kong. Kenneth comes in and asks what happened, but he knows. Gigi tells him that now's not the time for someone like her, as she is a drain to his energy. Definitely not Genki at all. She says that Kenneth can touch her butt and breasts if she likes. Okay, things are getting Genki again. As she is the Cersei team's good luck charm, he tends to agree with her, as he has been stressed lately. Also, don't forget about the butt and the boob thing she just said. Kenneth will take Gigi along as he heads south for Adelaide. They head out on a carrier. The cabinet members that are now on board with the two sit in awkward silence as Kenneth is now with Gigi instead of Mace, who they came with from Hong Kong. Kenneth asks her what she thinks of the operation, this flight, and everything in the upcoming future. Gigi believes that things will go well, and they may even be able to capture something from Mafty. She then pauses and says, "Never mind, you won't capture something. It will sink into the waters." She eventually passes out. Later, Kenneth wakes up once they get close to Australia and informs her that her luck came in handy once again. Thanks to Penelope, they were able to take down one of Mafty's ships. This is the Valiant. Gigi never considered that Hathaway may be on board. Kenneth introduces her to the rest of the team and is officially recognized by the Cersei unit. 3 hours earlier, the Valiant is moving through Benoi Harbor. The Valiant has an intricate camouflage system that doesn't work with the area's environment. Karaya and Julia went ahead to contact support forces and should be expecting them. The Minovsky craft system on the Psy Gundam comes in handy as the terrain is in marshy wetlands. This resupply mission involves them moving into Australia as forces, including the Owen Belly forces, make the retreat. They will try to help those in need as they make their escape. During this supply mission, they run into Fabio and his compatriots, Cheng He and Federico. Hathaway grins and says, "So, not Guangzhou, huh?" It seems that their intel was wrong about the changing of the meeting place after calling Hathaway sloppy, so Hathaway jabs back at him. They ask for help with an immediate attack on Darwin, which Hathaway wasn't expecting. Fabio believes that if they attack Darwin, it will make EFF think that Mafty forces are heading to Guangzhou, giving them time to continue with the resupply in Australia. They lend Riddick's Galsazon to help out with Cheng He, Fabio, and his men. He officially makes the Own Belly forces a part of Mafty. He wonders if they could keep him in line. Hathaway meets with Julia Suga, whose nipples are erect under her shirt. Tamino's words, not mine. You horny dog. He asks her to take care of Karaya, as he won't be able to see her for a while. Julia mentions that after the mission, he should be easier on her. His Mafty personality can be tough on her. Riddick moves out with Chang. After their mission, they are to meet up with Fabio in Adelaide. Hathaway and Masam head to Darwin in the Psy Gundam. 3 men act as Karaya's proxy as she is not currently there. The informer of the carriers that recently arrived at the Darwin airport. They seem to be friends with the Own Belly forces. There is a huge increase in the electronic components coming into Australia, unlike Torrington area, which is devastated by the colony drop. Northern Australia seems to not need more power, so he wonders what this could mean. Masam and Hathaway get into the Gundam and take off. The passage of time in this chapter is awkward and it jumps around, but this all takes place before daybreak. Shortly around this time, the Valiant is sunk. Hathaway won't know about this until he makes it to Ayers Rock. Hathaway is starting to realize that he made a mistake not bringing in Fabio and the Owen Belly forces earlier. If Federico and his men attacked the airport earlier, Kenneth and Gigi may not be alive. They disembark and Kenneth instantly gets to work shipping ministers to Adelaide. Gigi says she has a bad feeling about this place. This causes Kenneth to get everyone back into the air faster. Gigi once again comes in handy as a good luck charm. They make their leave from Darwin. Once they are far out of sight, the Federico team begins their attack. The Darwin forces just broadcast the message, Mafty's Own Belly forces. Federico's team flees in a civilian plane from the base. Meanwhile, Koraya makes her way north to a small civilian airport outside of Darwin. Kenneth and EFF believes that it is the Own Belly forces merely stealing planes on their way to Guangzhou. They took the bait. The team is starting to believe that Gigi is the goddess of the Cersei unit. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The morale boost of his men justifies Gigi being here. We've seen this with Amado at the end of the war as well. He motivates the White Base crew claiming to be a new type savior, but new types don't have that power. It was just to help the White Base crew as they went into battle at Abawaku. Somewhere in Australia, Hathaway is fighting with Gustav Karls. Everyone is split up making their way to Adelaide. But why is this summit so important for Mafty? At the summit, the Federation will attempt to ratify a special bill on the return to Earth. The Federation certainly has the power on who can and can't come to the planet, but it was never officially ratified into law. This special bill actually codifies it and gives them full authority. No longer is it an unspoken rule. Manhunters are now legally sanctioned. But when a few elites have the power, it creates a bureaucratic dictatorship, when those in charge give the power to their Nepo babies. This is one reason why Mafty kills cabinet members. If the Federation wants to pass on power via bloodlines, then they will simply cut off the bloodline. Every once in a while, something comes along and uproots human consciousness. Char's rebellion was one of these moments. As Hathaway makes it to his next relay point, the ministers make it to Adelaide. The city only has 10,000 residents, but it slowly became Federation-controlled. One of Fabio's subordinates finally made it to Side 1 and provided SBTFV Londinian with the footage on the Owenbelly massacre. The news soon traveled to Earth, where many of the cabinet members saw Yoksum and Kimberly's men stopping Fabio's forces, using cruel and unusual methods. They demand Yoksum to tell them what the meaning of this is, but Yoksum and the police are spinning this as fake news. He and Gas Hugest head to the Plaza Hotel to speak with the Deputy Chief of Staff. Gas is currently acting as a liaison between Kenneth's Cersei unit and the Manhunters in Davao. They realize that Kenneth and his Cersei unit's performance was handled very poorly in Owenbelly. They need to get into contact with the 13th Autonomous Unit. They need to get in contact with Bright Noah. Bassam and Hathaway notice wildfires breaking out as they make their way to Ayers Rock. Chan and the 30 of Fabio's men are also heading in that direction. They go to investigate the fires as something seems off. Tomino goes into detail about the Minowski Cross system blowing the flames of the fire beneath the Kasai Gundam, but earlier Kasai was used in the marshlands because it wouldn't apply physics to the environment. This is a reminder that even Tomino is inconsistent. They find that the fire was most likely created by Rod Heinz Messer or Hendrix Hio's Galsazon. They finally make it to Ayers Rock and meet up with his comrades. Hendrix and the Galsazon are okay. Rod, however, was killed in action. Hathaway also learns that the Valiant was sunk. Wedge, Morley, and Rod are dead. He mentions that the good ones go first. Chang tells Hathaway Fabio's men have made it and are all resting. Chang has lost old allies and gained new ones. He feels a danger looming over Mafty. Hathaway catches his breath and takes a sip of coffee before Hendrix debriefs him and dumps more bad news onto his shoulders. Hendrix tells him how his comrades died by the hands of the Cersei unit, but interestingly, they only took out the Messers. They didn't pursue the Galsazons. Hathaway realizes that the Cersei unit is picking them off slowly and methodically. It is a war of attrition, and Mafty is on the losing side. He tells Hendrix to take his meds. If meds are brought up in Gundam, I always assume cyber new type enhancements, but it could just be some Vicodin or benzos to make the bad thoughts go away. This chapter ends with Hathaway thinking of Gigi and getting horny. 350 kilometers from Ayers Rock is Alice Springs. This is now the headquarters of the criminal police organization and the Manhunters. Kenneth's carrier lands in Alice Springs to pick up some Manhunters on the way to Adelaide. The Cersei unit is still amazed by Gigi's abilities to predict the future. She realizes that the more she helps Kenneth, the more she is hurting Hathaway. They get a hotel for the night. Of course, Kenneth doesn't sleep, but continues on working, which means Kenneth is probably watching her. Gigi takes a shower and ponders the difference between Kenneth and Hathaway. Kenneth is a gentle person with amazing leadership skills. She believes that all the luck they are having is all due to his command. She sees Hathaway as a wandering dog that is always on the move. For a moment, she reflects on the Count. They were only intimate a few times, but he was mainly burdened by business and inheritance. She never had any ill will towards him, but after a year, she could sense it couldn't be. She says that she leans towards Kenneth over Hathaway most likely because of some father complex. She is drawn to older men. Kenneth comes to her room later as she orders room service. They have some flirty banter before Gigi asks about Kimberly. She says that the Cersei unit should honor the past by finding Kimberly. She wants to go sightseeing in Ayers Rock, but Kenneth wonders if it has anything to do with the old commander. Kenneth loans her a Casaria to go to Ayers Rock while he continues forward towards Adelaide. He kisses her on the forehead and tells her to get some rest before leaving the room. Bright tells Mirai that he has to head to Earth the day after tomorrow. They were planning on checking out a shop in New Hampshire that day. Shouldn't it be New Hampshire? He submitted his resignation letter 6 months ago, but the Federation won't accept it, claiming that he is the only captain with combat experience on Earth. Bright thought of a career in politics, but after Char's rebellion, he is just waiting out the minimum requirements for his pension so he could get that Federation money and retire. They said they will allow him to retire after this mission. Also, Bright was a teenager when he joined the military and is now only in his mid-40s. He is still young, but with the battle scars of an older man, and is starting to show in his face. But god damn it, we have the return of Mustache Bright. It is glorious. He and Mirai are looking at buildings so they could eventually open a restaurant. The story will ultimately be the last time we see Bright. So if you ever wondered what Bright ended up doing post UC 105, he most likely lived out a quiet life running a restaurant with Chaemin and Mirai. However, he leaves the door open for politics and even daydreams of being the next Zeon Daikun. He informs Reagan Hamset, who is the second in command on the Rockeye Loom, about his departure for Earth. He tells Mirai that he is helping the Cersei unit and it should be a straightforward mission. Mirai says that maybe she could see Hathaway while on Earth. Mirai kisses him on the cheek as he goes to his day shift. She smiles but feels uneasy. Lane and the mobile suit team preps for Adelaide, while Gigi heads to Ayers Rock with the Casaria team. Lane says that involving her is the epitome of idiocy. He thinks that Kenneth has gone mad. He also refers to everyone around him as adults, like Amado or Camille, so I assume he is young, but unsure. Kenneth says that there is certainly, absolutely, without a doubt, no way that Mafty is in Ayers Rock. We jump to Mafty in Ayers Rock. They get an alert that Gustav Karls are nearby, and they instantly run into action. They find out that it is only one base jabber with 2 Gustav Karls. The team heads south while Hathaway handles the enemy with the Gundam. The Gustav Karls split off from the Casaria. One unit goes around the mountain while Hathaway cuts him off in the opposite direction. He takes out one of the mobile suits with his beam saber and kicks another one, causing the mobile suit's reactor to go off. He then gets on top of the Casaria and demands that they land. The Casaria crew is like, yeah, a reactor just went off and we aren't in normal suits. Can we move like 5 miles away? That is when Hathaway hears Gigi's voice. He can't believe it is in fact her. She wants him to take her as a prisoner. He takes her and leaves the Cersei crew alive. He does destroy their base jabber, however. Hathaway takes off with his new prisoner. He is happy to see her. He tells her that he wants to be with her forever. She catches him off guard by saying that is a lie. They won't be together forever. Remember, her prophecies are usually always right. She ultimately tells him that she is literally stuck between him and Kenneth. He wondered if she was a spy for Kenneth, but she seemed too sincere for that. The two fly off into the distance in awkward silence, and their positions are misaligned. Many of the ministers have made it to Adelaide for the summit, where they plan to vote the Return to Earth bill into action. Kenneth's Cersei unit tightens security as the summit begins. The General Chief of Staff of the Space Forces, General Medinum Guggenheim, meets with Kenneth, during which he is informed by Stag Mainzer that Gigi has been abducted by Mafty. He realizes that their goddess is gone. Mainzer goes, "Goddess? What are you talking about?" He realizes how romantic he has been acting during these times. He doesn't want to believe that Gigi has any connection to Mafty, but after her desire to go to Ayers Rock, it is hard to ignore. As the new commander, the Chief of Staff's secretary gives Kenneth new epaulets, which are the tassel thingies on senior officers' soldiers, now that he is a Commodore. And the more tassely thingies, the more important you are. He is informed that the 13th Autonomous Fleet is coming to help. He smirks because Kenneth believes he will have Mafty destroyed by the time Bright arrives. Guggenheim begins berating Kenneth Mainzer and other officers about not informing him of intel that Mafty has a Minovsky Craft System mobile suit. Kimberly left Guggenheim in the dark, and now Kenneth is not starting out on the right foot. Meanwhile, Lane Aim is laughing at the fact that Gigi was captured. The pilots of the Cersei unit are looking for glory and are tired of Kenneth taking the credit. Morale isn't going down because of Gigi, but rather going up due to the opportunity. Later that day, Mafty broadcasts a message to the world declaring war. The Federation has contaminated the Earth by allowing only the rich and powerful to live on it. They will soon enact a law that will make them further contaminate the Earth. The video footage merely shows Hathaway's silhouette. No one can make out who he is, but Kenneth, watching the broadcast, knows for certain that Mafty is Hathaway. He instantly sends out Casarias to try to triangulate the broadcast. Hathaway tells the world that the space immigration laws of today are no different from the old century when humanity wiped out countless species. The only solution to this problem is for all of humanity to leave Earth. The colonies can support this, but the people of the Federation refuse. Guggenheim realizes that this special bill was just finalized last night, so there is someone leaking this intel. Kenneth contacts Yoksum. Hathaway continues on about Article 23 of the bill. Post-colony drop, more and more of the Federation have been buying lands in Australia. A lot of it is now Federation-controlled. One side effect of this bill would be that all Australian landowners would have to give up their rightfully owned lands to the Federation. This would turn Australia into one giant Federation-controlled nation. It's only a matter of time until they do this to the entire world. Kenneth turns to the chief's secretary and asks if any of this is true. He gets a call from the Casaria pilots. They found Mafty in the broadcast and they can take him out, but Kenneth tells him to wait. He says to let them finish the broadcast as they might give up intel, and he now feels that Mafty might say some things that the Federation needs to hear. Hathaway says that if this bill goes into effect, it will allow the privileged class to come to Earth. And rich people are the worst. They're just going to throw their Amazon boxes everywhere. But more importantly, the opportunity for humans to leave Earth will pass. Earth's population is at an all-time low, and it will only go up once this bill is passed. The Federation is ready to open the floodgates, and they are trying to get a piece of the pie before taking as much money, or in this case, land, off the top. Because of this, Mafty is going to purge everyone at the Adelaide Summit. If any minister attempts to flee, they will be targeted and killed. However, all civilian personnel has 2 hours to flee the city. Mafty's broadcast turns to white noise. Others suggest leaving as they think Mafty will just end up using long-range missiles on an empty city. The chief of staff tells his men that since the dawn of Universal Century, the Federation has a long-standing history of never rescheduling. Did we reschedule the Federation Assembly in Dakar? No. Did we reschedule the Federation Naval Review at Compay Island? No. Did we reschedule the post-war summit on Side 7? No, we didn't. You're damn right. Did it all end in horrific disaster? Yes, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that the Federation never reschedules. An assistant brings Kenneth his new high command jacket with epaulets. Kenneth's scouting unit believes that Mafty most likely won't resort to using long-range missiles. This is just Mafty trying to cause panic. Many other Federation ministers are hesitant. Kenneth wants to get back to security, but one minister asks if the barrier is being set up. Kenneth says it will be up by tomorrow morning at the latest. As he leaves, the ministers call him back in just as they receive new intel. He asks Kenneth to take the call. It is Mainzer, informing him that they found down units 325 kilometers northwest of a place called Stonewall. They make the assumption that they are Mafty mobile suits. This relieves the nerves of some of the cabinet members. However, Kenneth believes it may be a ruse by Mafty. One person with horned glasses suggests that the loudest minister might be the mastermind behind Mafty's Quacksalver. They have to release something to the press in regards to the down Mafty suits. Did Mafty self-destruct their own suits? Does Kenneth give this to the public in their press release? Kenneth dwells as the workload begins stacking up. He wonders if Mafty really could change things for a brief moment. The guy with the horn-rimmed glasses speaks to Kenneth like a politician and gives him no real details. Even after asking about the barrier being put up, he takes off and begins to become annoyed by these politicians. They have no real-world experience and enact laws without an understanding of the people. The Federation bureaucratic nonsense is getting to him. Kenneth mentions that this hereditary system is evolving into a monster. Elected officials on the sides bring in money to the colonies. Even the space noids are corrupt elected officials that does many shady things. But even these shady politicians in the colonies are still funneling money into the colony and thus boosting the economy. He tells his men to consider these downed Mafty vehicles as distractions. Now that he knows Hathaway is Mafty, he realizes that in Davao, Hathaway's hotel was attacked. So he isn't against firing on himself to set up a diversion. As everyone is expecting a bombing raid from the west, Kenneth believes it will be a mobile suit assault from the east. He is briefed by the speaker on more intel coming in. Lane Ames' squad are in Stonewall and have spotted mobile suit debris. The speaker and ministers are certain that things will go smooth, even though it is clearly a distraction. The speaker tells Kenneth that is where your Cersei unit comes in. Kenneth is frustrated by the blatant ignorance. Hathaway is having a bad dream as he sees Quess, who berates and taunts him about getting her killed. He doesn't have hands behind his dreams and can't hide his tears behind them. He eventually wakes up in a tent with Gigi. She tells him that he is pushing himself too hard for someone so young. He seems to have some fever or cold and just trying to push through it. Gigi gives him some meds. She is amazed at how nice everyone at Mafty is, despite them being terrorists. Hathaway has about 2 hours to get rest before their next move. The two lay in silence before Hathaway talks about the new types he witnessed throughout his life. He doesn't seem to see himself as a new type. He just fights the way he knows how to. Hathaway believes that hyper-individualism lies at the heart of the problem, and that man needs to turn to collectivism. While preaching to Gigi, she's just rubbing herself on him and giving him subtle hints to have sex. He's not picking up on it. Gigi says this collectivist mindset sounds like a new type utopia. She says boring because that makes sex irrelevant. But Hathaway is still not taking the hint. Come on, dude. Hathaway is now a part of the new type manosphere as he says sex is merely a tool to see clarity. Gigi is blunt with him and says that he seems to be hiding behind his former lover quests. This seems to strike a nerve with Hathaway because he tells her to be gone by the morning. Before leaving, she says, have faith. You hold the potential to be a new type. As she leaves, she sees Messers and Galsasans hiding in tiny caves hidden from the skies. One person reaches out to her. It is Cheng He. He goes to talk to Hathaway. Meanwhile, Fabio and the Owen Belly forces talk to Gigi and treat her like a goddess of luck. Just like Kenneth, Gigi notes that perhaps his men doesn't know about Hathaway and Kariah. How do you know about Hathaway and Kariah? I guess you knew about Quest. Gigi's new type power is foreshadowing. Meanwhile, Hathaway rests. Raymond and Emeralda welcomes Gigi into the Galsasans to hang out. The sun begins to rise. Mafty is using old telephone lines as their communication network. They are currently using an old phone booth. Well, that's something that will have to be changed in the movie. Give Mafty an army of delivery pigeons in the movie. Make it happen, Bandai Filmworks. A man receives a message. He gets on a gasoline-powered motorcycle, which is very rare, and takes off towards the Mafty camp. He sends the Mafty army word from Quacksalver that the cabinet meeting is moving forward on schedule. Fabio and the Own Belly peeps have already left to spread Minovsky particles around Adelaide. Hathaway ignores small talk from Emeralda to ignore anything regarding Gigi. He tells his men to grab food and anxiety meds, so they are all taking anti-anxiety medication. It isn't cyber new type meds like we thought last time. He and his men mourn the loss of Captain Wedge and the Valiant, and then discuss the mission. Their goal is to attack one building in the city center containing most of the cabinet members. If they could do this within 30 minutes of entering the city, things should go smoothly. The only concern is that they have no intel on this barrier that the Cersei team plans on using during this operation. One soldier's civet believes that it will be a beam barrier, but no beam barrier on the scale of a city has ever been engineered. They simply have to push through regardless. Their morale isn't as strong as before. Also, they still have Kimberly as a prisoner and plan on using him as a bargaining chip along with Gigi, though most don't find Gigi as a threat. 30 minutes later, they prep for takeoff. Raymond tries to talk to Hathaway, but he isn't having it. Emeralda tells him to leave Hathaway alone and entices him with hugs. This is the first time Emeralda and Raymond showed signs of being lovers. I guess sharing a tent was a dead giveaway. The two lovers say a silent goodbye to one another as Emeralda goes into the Messer and Raymond into the Galsazan. Gigi, Kimberly, and 4 other prisoners are with Raymond. He too sees Gigi as a source of luck and tells her that Hathaway simply can't be burdened with certain conversations right now. One man asks Kimberly if Kenneth Slegg ever tried to rescue them. He sits in silence with his head hung low. They begin their mission. 6 Galsazans lift into the air, each carrying 2 Messers, while 2 of the subflight systems carry just extra weapons. Ahead of the pack is Kasai Gundam. They are 400 kilometers from Adelaide and will take them 30 minutes. On Fencer Main's Messer is a rookie pilot that hasn't really been tested. Hathaway sees this as a point of failure. Galman contacts Hathaway and notices he is struggling internally. He wonders if he is still hung up on Gigi. He says he has shut her out of his mind and she might be a spy for Kenneth still. Galman turns to the others on the Galsazan and says, "Can you believe this guy didn't make a move?" But then he turns back to the comms and suggests to him that maybe he'd try to make a move on her after the mission, as everyone could obviously see his true feelings. He essentially allows Hathaway to drop his guard for a moment and be vulnerable in a time when he should be at his strongest. Hathaway says that he will win Gigi over Kenneth and uses this as a mantra. Fabio should meet at the designated meeting point after the 3rd wave is unleashed. Hathaway has done all he could do. Using the Gundam, he breaks the sound barrier. The first hour of the assembly was the hardest on Kenneth. He learned that even with people working nonstop and getting that overtime pay, they still haven't tested the beam barrier. He is then informed that Minovsky particles have been spread all throughout Adelaide. It is equally distributed throughout the city to give no insight into Mafty's direction of attack. He orders a Casaria and 2 mobile suits to go scouting when someone yells, "They're here." Usually, you have about a 10-minute buffer from Minovsky particle dispersion to physical contact. They miscalculated, however. Kasai Gundam reaches Mach 2 as it flies towards the city. Anti-air missiles were fired, but the homing features malfunctioned. He does a flyby near the command center, causing the entire facility to erupt. Hathaway hits a mobile suit supply depot on the base. Kenneth gets people to the evacuation shelter. None of the phones are working. He realizes this isn't going to be easy for Lane AIM. Lane gets into Penelope. He gets shaken really hard by an explosion nearby. He is frustrated by the faux Gundam pilot for doing as he pleases. Lane takes the role of focusing on Gundam mastery, while others handle the politics around him. Amado was this way as well. He had Bright to handle things, where Lane has Kenneth. Lane and Kenneth's command-subordinate relationship seems more contentious, however. Kenneth needs to learn the power of a good slap. It seems the transformation system is broken, but Lane has no intention of transforming. He takes off as another explosion hits the base. Smoke engulfs the area, and Lane uses his exhaust to clear it. Oh man, I hope he isn't using Corsair fans. It has only been about a minute since the attack happened, but Lane feels he launched too late. He sees a streak of light pass by in an instant. He is certain it is Kasai Gundam. One thing that both Penelope and Kasai have the ability to do is fly faster than the speed of sound. Hathaway is flying around Mach 2 currently. This may not seem like much in a world of faster space travel, but this marks a huge jump in technology for atmospheric flight. And it is all thanks to the miniaturization of the Minovsky craft system. It has come a long way since UC-0079, when all Amado could do on Earth in the Gundam was jump and hoped the landing didn't break his neck. But Lane has a throwaway comment that seems very important. How is Kasai Gundam protected at those speeds? Why, with a beam barrier. Lane notes that Mafty perfected it, while EFF is still trying to figure it out. For a moment, he realized this all happened when Gigi was captured, and he wonders if she really is good luck. He instantly casts that thought out of his mind. Lane notices an attack near the festival center in the city. It is Galman and his team. There are Gustav Karls all over the water, oblivious to this attack. Lane tries to get his teammates' attention, but Minovsky particle dispersion makes his screaming on the comms hard to hear. One thing to note is that this is all taking place in a 200-ish kilometer radius around Adelaide, and people are moving with the quickness. He rushes to the city, but Galman's team has turned it to rubble. They engage in battle, and Lane takes down a messer. He won't allow them to retreat. Galman pulls out his beam saber and rushes Penelope, dodging its funnels. Suddenly, a giant explosion goes off. The downed messer's nuclear reactor detonates, and a mushroom cloud erupts from the mobile suit. This gives Galman and the rest of the team time to flee from Penelope. The nuke going off causes his funnels to malfunction. He doesn't pursue. In the distance, he sees the light of Kasai Gundam. Lane once again wonders if their luck has run out. Everyone is in the midst of the battle. They had no time to take in the fact that the person that just went down in the messer was Emeralda. Kenneth praises Lane for taking down Mafty mobile suits. The pilot pushes himself, but Kenneth reminds him that war isn't just taking down mobile suits and getting some fake points that only exist in your head. During war, sometimes retreating is an okay option. Kenneth wonders why he is acting so modest. He has seen right through Lane this whole time. He could read Lane's hatred towards him and Gigi earlier. Lane is taken aback by Kenneth's understanding of his subordinates. He calls Kenneth Captain, but soon corrects himself and says Commodore, before suggesting that perhaps Gigi had some merit to Cersei. Kenneth's assistant, Francine, informs him that Hundley Yoaksum was able to make his escape and is currently in the underground shelter. Lane goes on standby while Kenneth goes to meet the director. He hates that he is underground and feels like he isn't doing anything while chaos ensues above him. We talk about the bureaucratic nonsense. In this novel, Kenneth refers to it as the art of waiting, and EFF has mastered this art. He meets with Yoaksum, whose left arm received minor wounds. He was trapped under concrete when things started to pop off. Yoaksum is sarcastic and says, "What have you been doing, sleeping?" Kenneth answers seriously and says he will dismiss himself and take responsibility for his action. Drama queen Yoksum cuts through the drama by saying let's worry about that later. He informs Kenneth that the cabinet members have passed a few bills before the attack went down. As of now, the bureaucrats of Earth now have full control over Earth immigration. The Rockeye Loom and the 13th Autonomous Fleet enters Earth orbit. As the ships prepare to enter into the atmosphere, Daddy Bright wonders if his son is sick and is concerned. He then wonders if his son is with a woman and goes from concerned to extremely concerned. Oh, Bright. Ah, Bright. In a forest 50 kilometers southeast of Adelaide, Hathaway and Mafty's forces regroup. He tells Fabio that he and the Owen Belly forces have fared well in these times. Fabio tells Hathaway that they will make their way downstream and retreat when the time comes. But he has that look in his eyes that says, nah man, I'm going out in the blaze of glory. After the loss of 2 Galsazans and 6 Messers, he properly reassures Hathaway. Mafty will go out on the second raid on the city, and Fabio will follow suit in a third wave. Also, there is a Mafty member called Kausaria or Kausaria, and it is too close to the Kausaria base jabber. Make better mouth sounds, Tomino. Everyone's morale is all over the place. Galman's voice is heard over a receiver as silence comes over Mafty's crew. Kausaria was trying to blame Emeralda's death on Gigi, and Galman commands the room and gets everyone on the same page. Galman asks for the release of the prisoners, and Hathaway obliges. Kimberly leads the pack of prisoners with Gigi in the back. They will leave them before taking off for the second wave. Fabio and his team has already taken off to wait for the third wave. Having Kimberly be found alive will be a blow to EFF's ego and a win for Mafty. As they take off, Galman is reminded that he is a middle-aged man fighting with youngsters. No one will cry for him if he is dead. He says that he is going to live to find himself a woman to settle down with. He feels if he doesn't, this will all be for nothing. Oh, it sounds like you're gonna kill Galman as well, don't do that. Mafty heads back to Adelaide. On the ground, Gigi instantly heads with great speeds in the direction of the mobile suits. Kimberly and the others follow her awkwardly as she is the only one not handcuffed, and she happens to have the keys. Once she finds a road, she takes the keys and throws them in the forest. The Cersei men and Kimberly begin searching for the keys, and she runs towards Adelaide. She wants to see Hathaway before his potential demise. She doesn't know how this will play out, however. A caravan of Elakars head out of the city. They are full of battle-injured soldiers, casualties of Mafty's first wave. They will most likely pick up Kimberly and find her, but she keeps running. She is tired of having her life be left in other people's hands. Gas Hugest meets with Yoksum, who is still tending to his wounds. As the two have a discussion, Kenneth monitors the Gustav Karls and the Kasarias in the command center. He is certain that a gentle slope south of Adelaide is where Mafty's second attack will occur. They removed the flying form parts of Penelope. They will send a Kasaria north as a distraction while Lane waits for Kasai Gundam in the south. Lane will have only 2 Gustav Karls to assist him, but he is certain that is adequate. Lane wants to be able to fight the Gundam at its full potential, so he is somewhat worried. Kenneth reminds him to use the beam barrier to his advantage. He sees that Lane is growing as a pilot. Remember, Penelope Gundam is just Odysseus Gundam with the flight form. Without it, we see Odysseus Gundam in its true form. Kenneth notes that this slimmed down version is very light on its feet. The Gundam takes off. He receives a call that informs him that they spotted Mafty's signature. Good, they don't have to scout them out. EFF can simply let Mafty come to them. Before seeing them on the monitor, 2 Gustav Karls suddenly are taken out. They see 6, maybe 8 Mafty units. They take down 1 Galsazan. Kenneth stays alert as things start to take off. Mafty passes over a series of mountains called Flinders Ranges, heading south towards Adelaide when they spot 3 Gustav Karls. They go into action as he believes it isn't a trap. This is confirmed when they swiftly take them out. Hathaway is in range of the airport in Adelaide and lets the missiles rip, but they are blocked by Lane and Penelope Gundam. At the same time, Raymond's Galsazan is in the east, causing havoc on the festival center. Lane moves swiftly. Hathaway fires another missile barrage towards Penelope and their airbase. The ensign takes out a missile, but the rest hits the base. He unleashes funnels. Penelope's leg is malfunctioning from Lane's battle with Galman earlier. Also, funnel missiles is a bad name for Kasai Gundam Saikomu weapons. They should be called kamikaze funnels because they are normal funnels with beam weapons. but they can explode on impact. The two pilots unleash their funnels and they have a funnel battle. Hathaway says Lane's name on the comms, which throws him off. They're equally matched, and they take out each other's funnels and go in for the melee attack. Odysseus Gundam's skirt armor is destroyed. We talked about last week how Odysseus Gundam plus the flight form system makes Penelope Gundam. Although the book refers to it as Penelope, I'm pretty sure we're seeing Odysseus in battle. Or at least we better be. Imagine it just being the same battle from the first movie again. Hathaway takes a beam rifle energy pack and overloads it, causing an explosion. It does massive damage to Odysseus. Gauman tries to help Hathaway, but suddenly he is attacked from behind by 3 Gustav Karls. One of their messers goes down. Gauman is too distracted to help now. Gauman fires on the festival center and takes cover in the dust. Fencer and Golf try to do the same, but they are shot down. Oh no, Fencer and Golf! Those guys. One thing that the novels do more so than the anime and the manga is that when a mobile suit goes down, that reactor goes off. Tiny nukes are going off all over the place. Also, Tomino goes into detail about Golf and Fencer's units bouncing and ricocheting around before exploding, and it made me laugh. I definitely need to know that Golf bounced 3 times before vaporizing. There are no high-rise buildings in existence in Adelaide anymore. Underground, Commander Mainzer informs Kenneth that the barrier is finally ready. He pulls up the monitor and watches as the 2 Gundams bounce from one camera to another. Much of the security cameras in the city have been taken out. Lane is on the defensive, trying to lure Psy Gundam towards the barrier. Hathaway slices off Penelope's hand. Lane tries to fire off his beam rifle with his other hand, but Hathaway tears through that as well. Odysseus is losing altitude. Hathaway has an opening to take out Lane. He rushes in, but at that moment, the beam barrier is activated. He feels a surging pain before instantly passing out. Electricity flows through the Gundam before falling to Earth. Lane is lucky to still be alive. He heads down to the Gundam and opens the cockpit to see that it is the guy he met back in Davao. For a moment, Lane wonders if Kenneth is an accomplice to Mafty. Hathaway drifts in and out of consciousness. He thought a girl visited him and wondered if it was Gigi. He has come to terms with the fact that he will never see her again. He is being confined in a small cottage in Goolwa, south of Adelaide. He eventually comes to find Kenneth by his side. Kenneth tells him that he gave EFF a run for their money. Hathaway can't really feel his body and wonders if he has his limbs. Everything is there. He just happens to suffer from severe burns from the beam barrier. His heart is also damaged. It seems similar to the effects of someone who survived getting hit by lightning. He asks Hathaway who is Quacksalver. He says he hasn't actually met him. Kenneth lets him rest and says he will have a formal interrogation soon. However, that interrogation will not happen. Unknown to Kenneth, the cabinet members voted to completely bury this incident and all things Mafty. They're going to General Cohen this shit. When Kenneth heard of this decision, he was so furious that he submitted his resignation. He has been so disillusioned by the Federation throughout this incident and couldn't take it any longer. Of course, the Federation will use this as an opportunity to point fingers at Kenneth for the operation. They won't see their follies. They will just continue powering through for the benefit of themselves. This also guarantees that Hathaway will be executed. Kenneth tells Hathaway of this. He tells him that Gigi did come to visit him, but she probably won't get a chance to see him again considering the situation. Honestly, how was she able to see him at all considering the situation? Hathaway's lucid memories weren't a dream. He tells him that he sent Gigi back to Hong Kong, but Hathaway knows that is a lie and she is still in Adelaide. Kimberly wasn't punished for his poor leadership in Owenbelly and has no sense of shame. Kenneth lets Hathaway rest once again. Much of Mafty's forces went down during the attack, but what remains went underground and weren't heard from again. Of course, the Federation didn't learn from their mistakes. They are planning on doubling down on their immigration policy and using Mafty as a tool to acquire more power. Nothing ever changes. As Kenneth steps out of Hathaway's room, he is informed that Commander Bright has arrived. The EFF commanders meet with one another. Bright wonders if the Mafty prisoner gave any useful intel. All Kenneth can say to him is that he is very immature for his age. Bright showed up a day after Mafty was shot down. Though they couldn't help defend Adelaide, they had been helping over the past 4 days with snuffing out Mafty forces. Kenneth feels an unbearable weight for what he has to tell Bright. He thinks to himself that he should have never met with him. Luckily, Bright changes the conversation, asking about Kenneth's resignation. He bears the shame of the failure at Adelaide. Bright says that he put in his resignation 3 years ago, so it will take a while. But Kenneth says, no, I'm a screw-up. You are extremely competent, Bright. They're gonna keep you around forever. He doesn't say those exact words to Bright and passes the blame on the higher-ups. But he kinda says that straight up to Bright, and that is true. The things that make Bright such a great hero is ultimately what makes him no different than his bureaucratic higher-ups. A competent man with morals and values will always be taken advantage of in the Federation's broken system. To put it more bluntly, the system can't be fixed from the inside. Ignoring the genocide, which is hard, I know. This has always been Shar's platform. This was the reason Shar was so angry with Amado and Bright for running back to the Federation after Grips and the Neo-Zeon War. The rise of Manhunters, and the now doubling down of said Manhunters, is ultimately no different than the Titans, and no one has learned anything. Kenneth says that regardless of if this is true or not, the Federation sees Bright as a golden child who brings new types into the world. They are going to hold on to that for as long as they can. Bright continues his search for Mafti survivors, and Kenneth escorts him out. Kenneth says that conversation took more energy out of him than any military operation. As he tries to rest, he is met with General Guggenheim. They go to Kenneth's office. The commander informs him that they officially accepted his resignation, but he still blames himself for the cabinet members that died. Guggenheim says that he has integrity and he shouldn't let his failures weigh him down. The commander showed a moment of humanity which threw Kenneth off, as he hasn't seen that from any of the higher-ups in a while. His pension won't be at his new rank of colonel, but rather will be paid out at the rank of captain. You only did one mission as a high commander, so fuck you, I guess. Kenneth doesn't seem to care. Bright Noah will be taking over his command, even though he asked to retire years ago. He tells Kenneth it will only be for 3 months until they find a new commander. This is most likely a lie, and they will find an excuse to keep him for as long as possible. Also, the cabinet members decided to vote to have Mafti executed. Kenneth's last mission is to execute Mafti. He is hesitant, so Guggenheim suggests that maybe he has his successor execute him for him. For a second, Kenneth thinks maybe it would be better if a relative did it. He asks the general if he knows who Mafti is. Of course, none of the generals can be bothered, even though I'm sure they received intel. The weight of what's going on in Kenneth's mind is too much for him to keep to himself. He drops formality and says, I'm going to need your discretion on what I am about to tell you. He tells Guggenheim that Mafti is Hathaway Noah. The general is genuinely concerned. He says he is glad they didn't dismiss him earlier. Kenneth must carry out his duty. They can't have a father kill his own son. As Kenneth takes his leave, Guggenheim tells him that he has been granted residency on Earth if he wishes to reside here. A throwaway comment agitates Kenneth as a high commander uses privilege as a form of hush money, like a mob boss. He is more annoyed with how casual the general was about it. However, he learned that not only he was granted citizenship, but also Gigi as well. Bright is informed by Commander Crescendo that his command will take 3 months. Since most of the Mafti forces have been taken care of, he's going to take it easy and treat this like a vacation. He says he will find a few good fishing spots and maybe even give his son Hathaway a visit. He says he wants to be there for the execution of Mafti, but Crescendo highly suggests that he doesn't attend. Bright heads out to meet with Guggenheim. He heads down to Adelaide and tours the hangar to see Kasai Gundam. The mechanic tells Bright that they don't know who made this Gundam, but he seems to think it looks like an Anaheim job. Bright says that is the world of adults for you. Bright is quoting Camille in this moment. It seems that his young new type wards certainly rubbed off on him. Bright is in the mindset of not asking any questions and keeping his head low until he can get out of this bureaucratic nightmare. He notes enemies are now piloting Gundams, but the mechanic tells him that the Gundam pilots have always had a rebellious spirit. The mechanic is right, and he says this more for you, the audience, but don't Bright-splain Bright. 2 officers tell Hathaway that his execution will be at 4:30 a.m. in the morning and tell him it will be done by a firing squad. He asks the men if the option for hanging was ever on the table. They say one cabinet member pushed for his hanging even if he was still passed out. This one cabinet member seemed adamant. Now, throughout the attack on Adelaide, we notice a cabinet member being quite emphatic about getting rid of Mafty by all means necessary. Even during the attack, Kenneth mentions that he wouldn't be surprised if one of these men were Quacksalver. When Hathaway gave his message to the world as Mafty, they knew of the cabinet members voting of the Return to Earth bill, meaning someone in EFF is leaking information directly to Mafty. It is never outright said that Quacksalver has been masquerading in front of us this whole time as a cabinet member. This question about asking about a hanging seems to be some type of canary in the coal mine situation that lets Hathaway know Quacksalver is still around, meaning Hathaway will continue without him. The two men make their leave. He was prepared for this day since he joined Mafty a little over a year ago. He thinks about Karaya and wished that he met up with her when he was in Darwin. A nurse comes in and gives him a word processor to write his will. Remember, this novel was written before a laptop existed. He doesn't have anything to write, but he asks for an apple, and she obliges. Even though Hathaway is a terrorist and a murderer, this woman shows him with compassion and empathy. People like this in the low tiers of Federation society were the ones Mafty were fighting for. He is glad that someone like her is around for his last moments. He apologizes to her for any citizens hurt, but she informs him that most of the citizens made it out safely thanks to his message. He passes out for a little bit and wakes up to the nurse leaving a pen and paper. She seems sad at how sudden his execution is. Hathaway wants to practice walking for his execution, and the nurse helps him. Afterwards, he has finally brought the apple. It didn't have that crisp bite he was looking for, and was a disappointment. He says that he merely aspired to be a new type like his heroes before him. He didn't do this because of Quest or Char's rebellion, but he can't exactly pin why he chose this path. Perhaps Gigi was right. Gigi is being held up in a cottage as a prisoner. She doesn't even have a CD to listen to. Remember, written before a laptop. Every hour that goes by for her makes her heart drop more since she learned of Hathaway's execution. She heads out and demands to go to Kenneth's location. They won't let her see the execution, but she can see the Commodore. She reaches the discreet location where Kenneth is meeting with Bright. He notices Gigi and tells her to leave. She doesn't want Hathaway's father to be present at his execution. Kenneth bluntly says this is a man's job and Hathaway is prepared for this. She runs away crying. Bright is probably watching and thinking, why did a girl show up here at 4:30 in the morning crying? Weird. Kenneth is able to tell Bright to wait while quickly finishing up some tasks. He's going to quickly do this himself before Bright can figure it out. Hathaway is transported to the courtyard where a firing squad awaits him. He tells him his sentence and asks him if he has any last words. He says, I believe that someday the sound mind of humanity will protect this earth. Until then, the mistakes made by people will continue to be corrected by Mafty. He tells the priest he is grateful for everyone in his life. Kenneth puts the blindfold on Hathaway and tells him that he always saw him as a friend. The firing squad takes aim and fires. Gigi was so caught up in her tears that she didn't hear the shooting. He meets with Bright after the execution. Bright heard the gunshots and wondered how it went. He knew he went through with the execution without him. He tells Bright that he was a worthy opponent. The death signature that Kenneth signed had no name attached to it. Though he requests it, Hathaway will be given no gravesite or memorial. Bright's new don't ask question attitude saved him from knowing his son's death. An older Bright would have been more inquisitive and would most likely cause Kenneth to break down. Later that day, Kenneth assumed all power to Bright. Gigi and Kenneth didn't talk to each other that night. The next day, he said his goodbyes to Francine, his assistant, and wishes Bright good luck. Meisner will be staying with Cersei under Bright's command. He notes that Bright's eyes are just like Hathaway's. Which ones? The tiny dot eyes? Or the more realistic eyes they gave him in Char's counterattack? They head back to Adelaide, where Lane and the Cersei pilots give him a gift and thank him for everything he has done. They don't state what the gift is, so leave a comment on what you think Lane gave Kenneth. Kenneth reciprocates by giving Lane his riding whip. Gigi and Kenneth head to Davao, where he is effectively a civilian. Neither of them can speak, and they retreat to their separate rooms in a hotel. After everything that went down, Kenneth can't hold it in, and he bursts into tears. The next day, the two are in shock as Gigi informs Kenneth of the news. It seems that someone leaked that Mafty is Hathaway, and they point fingers at Bright for executing the terrorist. The source is Guggenheim, and Kenneth realizes that he was stabbed in the back by the general. The two are horrified for how the Noah family will react to this news being broke to the public. However, there are no records of Hathaway being related to Mafty. Bright will most likely wonder the truth for the rest of his life. They realize this means people will most certainly be after Kenneth after this news, so they decide to take refuge in Japan. They take a plane to Taiwan and eventually get a charter to Japan. Gigi wonders what Kenneth plans on doing now that he is a civilian. He says that he wants to seek out new types. Gigi says that Hathaway will be remembered anytime that Mafty is spoken, and likens his cause to the Murrumbidgee River, a river that never runs dry. And that will conclude Mobile Suit Gundam, Hathaway's Flash. This is quite the bummer, not only because of the death of Hathaway, but because it seems that the Federation is destined to never change. Even though Mafty is destroyed, Hathaway was able to change the hearts and minds of at least a couple people, including Kenneth. There's a lot of wandering and forlorning in this story. Hathaway, Gigi, and Kenneth feel alone, abandoned, and desperate, all for different reasons. Even Hathaway couldn't pinpoint exactly what he was fighting for. All he was confident about in the end is that he didn't do it for a quest. He did it for himself. This ending also marks the ending to early Universal Century. We are now moving into late Universal Century. So much pain and chaos have occurred between Space Noids and Earth Noids. But while this was all going on Earth, Jupiter has slowly been growing its own empire. We head to Universal Century 123, where we see the rise of Crossbone Vanguard and Cosmo Babylonia. But that will do it for now, new types. Remember, you don't always find the answers. You could spend your entire life wandering and still find nothing. Is that the message of the story? Damn, that's grim. Alright. Peace.